Hi, I'm Andrew, the person behind this channel. Going forward, you'll be hearing my voice mixed in alongside the narration you're used to. I hope you'll enjoy the change, and as always, thank you so much for listening. The ground is wet when they carry him past you. You do not look. You have learned in the last 18 months that looking costs something you cannot always afford to spend. It is June 1944. You are standing in a field in southern England, and in a few hours you will step out of an airplane over occupied France, and a significant number of the men around you will not come back. You know this. You have been told this in different words, by different people, in different rooms. The army does not hide the mathematics. It just doesn't dwell on them. Your name is in the manifest. Your chute has been packed, inspected, repacked, and inspected again. Your rifle is cleaned. Your jump boots are tied the way you tie them. Left over right, double knotted, same as every morning since Fort Benning. The ordinary things are very ordinary tonight. That is the strange part. Somewhere over the channel, in the dark, you will hear the jump master shout, and you will stand, and you will shuffle toward a hole in the side of the aircraft, and you will fall into the night sky of another country. You have never been to France. You have never been to Europe. 6 months ago, you had never been on an airplane. The plane smells like oil and old metal, and the particular smell of men who have not slept. There are 28 of you in this aircraft. You know all of them by name, by habit, by the sound of their breathing. You know which ones pray and which ones play cards and which ones go quiet in the last hour before anything difficult begins. You are going to a place called the Cotentina Peninsula. You have seen it on maps many times. It looks like nothing, a thumb of land sticking into the sea. On the map, it is clean and abstract. You know it is not clean. You know the Germans have been there for 4 years, building, digging, preparing. You have been told that the fields are mined, that the hedgerows are so thick a tank cannot push through them, that the Germans have flooded the low-lying areas behind the beaches so that a man falling into the wrong field can drown in 3 feet of water. You have been told to avoid the low-lying areas. Your drop zone is partially in a low-lying area. You know this because someone told you, and you wrote it down, and then you memorized it, and then you tried to forget it. Tonight the wind is running at 15 miles per hour. The safe maximum for a combat jump is 13. Nobody said anything about that. In the fields around you, there are more men than you have ever seen in one place, thousands of them, moving toward aircraft in the dark, carrying the same weight you are carrying, wearing the same paint on their faces, thinking whatever it is that men think in the last hour before history begins. They told you this was the biggest operation in the history of warfare. You believed them. You still believe them. You are about to be part of it, which is not the same as understanding it. The moon is partially behind a cloud. The grass is wet. Someone is being sick near the tree line. You tighten the strap on your helmet and check your reserve chute for the first time tonight, and you do not think about low-lying areas, and you do not think about the wind, and you do not think about the man they carried past you, and you tell yourself, this is just another jump, just like Fort Benning, just like the dozen times you have done this in training over English fields in the early morning. You tell yourself that. You do not entirely believe it, but the line is moving now, and your boots are tied, and your name is in the manifest. And it is June the 5th, 1944, and in a few hours the world will change. This is quiet history at bedtime. If this is your kind of story, a subscribe means everything right now. Every detail in this story comes from the historical record. Just relax and feel free to let this play as you drift off to sleep. Now, let us begin. Your name, for the purposes of the Army of the United States, is a 9-digit number stamped onto a pair of metal discs that hang around your neck on a chain. One disc stays on the body. One disc goes with the report. You have had this explained to you. You prefer not to think about it. But before the number, there is the name Thomas Edward Callahan, 22 years old, from a town in southeastern Ohio called Caldwell, population just under 2,000, situated in Noble County, in the hill country east of Columbus, where the land falls and rolls, and the winters come early. Your father worked in the oil fields. Noble County was oil country once, shallow wells dotting the hillsides, boom towns that became quiet towns before you were born. By the time you were growing up, the work had thinned. Your father drove a truck. Your mother kept books for a hardware store in town. You had a younger sister and a dog and a bicycle, and the general sense that the world beyond Noble County was very large and very far away. You finished high school in 1940. You enlisted in the Army in the spring of 1942, 4 months after Pearl Harbor, at the age of 19. You are now a private first class in E Company, 2nd Battalion, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. The 506th PIR was activated at Camp Toccoa, Georgia, in July 1942. You reported to Toccoa in September of that year. The regiment ran its recruits up a mountain called Kurahi, a Cherokee word meaning stands alone, as a daily training exercise. The mountain was 3 miles up and 3 miles down, 6 miles every morning before breakfast in Georgia heat. You ran it the first morning without knowing what it was or why. By the end of the first week, it was simply what you did. You are not the same person who drove to the recruiting office in Caldwell. This is not a complaint. It is an observation. You completed the basic airborne course at Fort Benning, Georgia. The course was 3 weeks. The first week was ground training. How to fall, how to land, how to control a chute, how to exit an aircraft door, at 110 miles per hour without flinching. The second week was tower work, jumping from platforms at increasing heights. The third week was 5 qualification jumps from a C-47 aircraft. Every man who completed 5 jumps received the silver wings and the extra $50 a month in jump pay that came with them. $50 a month was the reason a significant number of men volunteered for Airborne. You volunteered because a sergeant at your induction station described the training as very difficult and looked at you as though he expected you to hesitate. You did not hesitate. You have made 14 jumps since Fort Benning, 12 in training over English fields, and 2 in combat in Sicily in the summer of 1943, when the 506th was not yet committed to action, but other regiments of the 82nd Airborne dropped into the dark over the island, and a significant portion of them were shot down by their own navy before they reached the ground. You know about Sicily. Everyone in the Airborne knows about Sicily. The Navy fired on the transports because they had not been properly notified of the flight path. 517 Allied soldiers and airmen were killed or wounded by Allied fire in that operation. The Army investigated. Procedures were changed. You were told the procedures had been changed. Tonight there are over 800 aircraft in the sky over England and out across the channel. The procedures have been changed. You are not thinking about Sicily. The 101st Airborne Division has been stationed in England since September 1943. You are at Greenham Common Airfield in Berkshire, in the Thames Valley, 45 miles west of London. The airfield is a flat expanse of concrete and grass carved out of the English countryside, surrounded by the kind of hedged fields and quiet villages that look as though nothing bad has ever happened in them. In the 9 months you have been here, you have trained constantly. Field exercises, map work, weapons qualification, more running, and you have also gone into the nearby town of Newbury on your days off and eaten fish and chips wrapped in newspaper and drunk warm English beer and played darts in low-ceilinged pubs with Englishmen who asked you where you were from and then told you they had a cousin in Chicago or a cousin in New York or a cousin in California and waited to see if those places were near where you were from. Noble County, Ohio is not near any of those places, but you learn to play darts. The broader strategic picture is something you understand at the level of briefings, which is a specific kind of understanding, factual, schematic, disconnected from the actual feeling of things. You know that Germany invaded France in May 1940 and that France fell in 6 weeks. You know that the Germans have occupied France for 4 years. You know that the coastline of northwestern France, Normandy, has been chosen as the point of Allied re-entry into Western Europe because it is within fighter cover range from England, because the beach gradients are suitable for landing craft, and because the German High Command has been convinced through an elaborate deception operation that the main Allied landing will come at Pas-de-Calais, further northeast, and has kept its strongest armored reserves positioned there. The deception is called Operation Fortitude. You do not know the name of the deception. You just know that the Germans are not expecting you here. Or so you have been told. You also know that Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, the man who fought the British across North Africa for 3 years, was appointed in December 1943 to oversee the Atlantic Wall defenses. Rommel has spent the last 6 months reinforcing the Normandy coastline with concrete emplacements, minefields, beach obstacles, and flooded fields. He believes the invasion can only be defeated on the beach in the first hours. If the Allies get off the beaches, he believes they cannot be stopped. He is trying very hard to keep you on the beach. Your job, the airborne's job, is to land inland before the beach landings begin. Secure the exits from the beaches so that the men coming off the landing craft have somewhere to go, and prevent German reinforcements from reaching the coast in the critical first hours. The beach landings begin at 06:30. You jump at 01:30. That is approximately 3 hours and 50 minutes from now. You are standing in a field at Greenham Common in the dark in June with 60 pounds of equipment strapped to your body, and the air smells like cut grass and aviation fuel, and somewhere across the airfield someone is playing a harmonica very quietly. You are checking your equipment for the last time. The load you are carrying is the product of months of planning and revision, an argument between men with different ideas about what a paratrooper needs and how much a paratrooper can carry and what a paratrooper will actually be able to do after jumping into the dark with 60 pounds of equipment and landing in a field in occupied France. The current consensus strapped to your body is as follows. The M1 Garand rifle, the standard infantry weapon of the American Army in the Second World War. 8-round M-block clip, effective range of 500 yards. Weight unloaded 9.5 pounds. You are carrying approximately 160 rounds of .30 caliber ammunition distributed across the pockets of your jump jacket and the additional bandolier slung across your chest. The rifle is broken down and secured in a canvas Griswold bag strapped to your left leg. You will release the bag on a line beneath you during the descent so it hits the ground first before you do and does not break your legs or your rifle on landing. On your right leg, a musette bag containing additional ammunition, a change of socks, a first aid kit, a week's worth of K rations, a water canteen with purification tablets, and a composition book in which you have written, in pencil, the names and home addresses of every man in your stick. 27 names, 27 addresses, because someone told you once that it was good to have them written down, in case. On your belt, a trench knife, a bayonet, 2 fragmentation grenades, a smoke grenade, and a .45 caliber M1911 pistol in a canvas holster. The .45 is a weapon for very close distances. You hope not to use it at close distance. In the breast pocket of your jump jacket, a composition book, not the one on your leg, a different one, containing the maps and terrain diagrams for your drop zone and the area around it. Also in this pocket, a letter from your mother, dated May 12th, which you have read 11 times and which you will not read again tonight because you have memorized it and because you do not want to unfold it in the dark with your hands the way they are. The way your hands are. Steady. This is something you check this afternoon, holding your hands out flat in front of you and watching them. Steady. You noted this. You noted it again. On your back, the T5 parachute assembly. Main canopy, 28 feet in diameter. Deployment bag, risers, harness. The T5 was the standard American military parachute of the war, capable of opening within 200 feet of the jump altitude and supporting a load of approximately 300 pounds. The static line, a 15-foot webbing strap connecting your deployment bag to the aircraft's anchor line cable, will pull the canopy open automatically as you exit the door. You do not pull a ripcord. The aircraft does it for you. What you do is step out the door and fall. Also on your back, the reserve parachute, positioned on your chest, 22 feet in diameter. Manual deployment only. You pull a D-ring on the left side. You use the reserve if the main fails to open. The main fails to open approximately once in every 125 jumps, according to figures you heard at Banning. You have made 14 jumps. You tell yourself the math is favorable. Beneath all of this equipment, you are wearing a woolen undershirt, a pair of woolen long underwear, an olive drab wool uniform shirt and trousers, a wool sweater, your M42 jump jacket, the jacket with the large cargo pockets, and your jump trousers, also with cargo pockets. Over this, your assault vest, your harness, your chute, and on your face, camouflage paint, black and green, applied with burnt cork and grease from a tin. Your face, your neck, the backs of your hands. Standard procedure for a night operation. The paint makes you hard to see in the dark, and the act of applying it makes the jump feel real in a different way than the briefings did. You applied it 2 hours ago in the barracks, using the tin mirror above your bunk. You barely recognized yourself. The total weight of everything you are carrying, 62 pounds. Some of the men in your unit are carrying more. A machine gunner in the stick behind yours is carrying 81 pounds. You have seen him practice walking in it. He walks like a man underwater. The army knows this is too much. The army has studied this problem. The conclusion of the study is that it is too much and that there is no alternative, and so you carry it. You are standing in the field at Greenham Common, and the line is beginning to move, and above you the sky is the particular dark of an overcast English night, and somewhere in that dark, across 112 miles of ocean, France is waiting. You have been waiting for this for a long time. You have been training for this for 22 months. You are not sure what you expected to feel standing here, something perhaps that is larger than what you are actually feeling. What you are actually feeling is the weight on your back, The pain on your face, the wet of the grass coming up through your jump boots, and the persistent, low-grade attention to everything around you. The kind of attention that sharpens when something very large is about to happen and the body understands it before the mind does. You heard this afternoon that General Eisenhower came to the airfields. You did not see him at your field, but men from the 502nd PIR said he came to their choke at Greenham, walked among the men, asked them where they were from, asked them about their training, shook hands. Eisenhower is a tall man, they said. He looked older than his photographs. He told them, full victory, nothing else. Then he stood and watched them load onto the planes. Someone said later that he went back to his car and cried. You don't know if that is true. You think it might be. The line moves. You shuffle forward with it. 62 pounds on your back, boots in the wet grass, face painted black and green, 22 years old, from Noble County, Ohio, where the winters come early and the world beyond it was always very large and very far away. Tonight you will go there. Tonight the world has gotten very close. There is a card game happening near the hangar entrance. 3 men, a flashlight held sideways, cards dealt on an ammunition crate. You know all 3 of them. You have eaten with them, trained with them, complained about the English weather, with them and the English food, and the endless English mud. One of them looks up as you pass and raises 2 fingers in a small salute, the kind you make when words are too much effort. You raise 2 fingers back. The card game continues. The aircraft are in rows on the hard stand, C-47 Skytrains, 30 of them in your section of the field, and in total across the Allied airfields tonight there will be 821 aircraft carrying the 2 American Airborne Divisions, the 101st and the 82nd, toward Normandy. The 101st alone is lifting 6,600 men in the first wave in 3 parachute infantry regiments, the 501st, the 502nd, and your regiment, the 506th, plus the men of the 377th Parachute Field Artillery. 6,600 men. You can't hold a number that large. You deal in the people immediately around you. The C-47 at the end of your row is named something, painted in letters near the nose in the way the crew sometimes do, but it's too dark to read it from here, and you don't go closer. The aircraft looks enormous from the ground and will feel much smaller once you are inside it. The cargo cabin of a C-47 is 92 inches wide and 271 inches long. 28 fully equipped paratroopers, seated on bench seats along both walls, facing each other, knees almost touching, elbows against equipment, helmets against helmets. The noise will be loud enough that speech is mostly gesture. You know this. You have been in C-47s many times. You are 40 minutes from loading. You sit on the ground near the edge of the hard stand, equipment still on your back, and you eat a sandwich that someone handed out from a crate an hour ago. White bread, something inside it that you cannot identify because the paint on your lips has a flavor that gets into everything. You eat the sandwich anyway because you do not know when you will eat again and the body needs what it needs. Someone sits down next to you. It is Corporal James Wirtz from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, your squad's assistant Bay Airman. Wirtz is 20 years old. He has a round face and a way of looking slightly amused that he has maintained through circumstances that should, by rights, have removed it. He doesn't say anything. You don't say anything. You eat a sandwich. Wirtz eats something, you can't see what, and then he says, quietly, not looking at you, "You write to anybody today?" You tell him you wrote to your mother last week. "Yeah," he says, "I wrote to my mother today. This morning, didn't say anything useful. Just, wrote." You nod. He is quiet for a moment. "Caldwell, Ohio," he says, with the slight emphasis he always puts on it, the mock formality you have come to recognize as affection. You think they know about any of this in Caldwell, Ohio. You tell him they probably heard something, that the papers have been running stories about a coming operation for weeks. Nothing specific, but enough. He says. And then, I bet it's a different thing reading about it. You agree that it is a different thing reading about it. The sandwich is gone. You don't remember finishing it. Overhead, a gap opens in the cloud and a small, irregular scatter of stars is briefly visible, then gone again. The wind is coming from the southwest, the same wind that has been coming for 2 days, the same wind that made the meteorologists argue, that made Eisenhower postpone the operation by 24 hours on June 4th, that made the entire apparatus of 150,000 men and 5,000 ships hold its breath for one more day. The decision to go was made this morning at 4:15 a.m. by one man looking at a weather chart in a room in a country house in Portsmouth. Eisenhower said, "Okay, we'll go." And so you are going. Wirtz stands up, brushes something off his jacket, adjusts straps on his equipment. "Caldwell, Ohio," he says again, softer. Then he walks toward the aircraft. You sit for another minute. The grass is wet. The wind moves through the hedgerows at the far end of the field with a sound like breathing. You think about your mother's letter. You do not take it out. You get up. You walk toward the aircraft. The loadmaster is standing at the door, a young man, Air Corps, younger than you, running his clipboard down the manifest as each man approaches. He checks your name, your serial number, your choke number. You are choke number 467, aircraft number 31. You climb in. The interior of the aircraft is exactly as you remember it from every other time. The smell of oil and hot metal and the particular dry cold that exists at altitude even in June. The bench seats along the walls. The dim red interior lights that give everyone the color of something preserved. The static line cable running the length of the ceiling. already anchored at the jump door end. You find your seat. You clip your static line. You settle the weight of your equipment and try to find a position that is not actively uncomfortable, which is not possible with 62 pounds strapped to your body, but there are degrees of uncomfortable, and you locate a position that is merely inconvenient rather than painful. The man to your left is Private Daniel Suarez from San Antonio, Texas. The man to your right is Sergeant Frank Dombrowski from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. These are the men who will be immediately adjacent to you when the jump door opens. Suarez is the man who will go out ahead of you. Dombrowski will follow. You have done this enough times that these positions feel permanent. Suarez goes first, then you, then Dombrowski. This is the order of things. The aircraft fills. The engine turns over. A cough, a catch, a roar, and then the second engine. And then the aircraft is vibrating with a steadiness that you can feel in your back teeth, and the loadmaster pulls the door shut, and the light on the ceiling goes from dim red to dimmer red. Outside, through the small porthole window opposite your seat, you can see the airfield moving. The aircraft is taxiing. And then there are other aircraft in front of you and behind, a column of them moving in the dark, their exhaust visible in the cool air, and the whole enormous machinery of the thing is assembling itself, aircraft after aircraft pulling into position, and the sound of it, the collective roar of hundreds of engines, is beginning to build into something that is more like weather than sound. The aircraft at the front of the column begins its run. Then the next. Then the next. The man to your right, Dombrowski, closes his eyes. His lips are moving. You look away. Suarez, to your left, has his helmet tilted forward and his arms crossed and his eyes closed. You cannot tell if he is sleeping or simply waiting. You look at the porthole. The aircraft is moving faster now. The tail lifts. The nose lifts. The ground drops away. You are in the air. England is below you, in the dark. Somewhere ahead of you, across the water that you cannot yet see, France is waiting. You have 62 pounds on your back and your name in the manifest, and a letter in your pocket that you know by heart. The engines roar. The red light holds. You are going. The English coast disappears behind you. You know this because the man across from you, Kowalski, from the 3rd platoon, has his face pressed to the porthole on his side, and then he leans back and you understand from that small movement that there is nothing below anymore except water. The channel. You have not crossed the channel before tonight. The English Channel, at its narrowest, at Pas-de-Calais, is 21 miles. At the point you are crossing, southwest, toward the Cotentin, it is closer to 112 miles. At the altitude the C-47 is flying, roughly 1,500 feet, at an airspeed of approximately 110 knots, this crossing will take just over an hour. 1 hour over water. You know what is at the other end. The aircraft is in formation. You cannot see the other planes from your seat, but you can feel them in the way the air moves around your aircraft, the slight turbulence that comes from flying in close proximity to other aircraft, and sometimes through the porthole you catch the blink of a red navigation light from a plane off to the side, a pulse in the dark, there and gone. Over 900 aircraft are in the sky tonight. You cannot hold that number. You deal in the red light above your head, and the sound of the engines, and the weight of your equipment, and the backs of your hands, which you check again, steady, and the sound of the man across from you breathing. The man across from you is breathing audibly, not because he is afraid, you do not think that, but because the equipment is tied across the chest, and breathing takes more effort than it normally does. And after an hour of this, the breathing becomes conscious and then audible, and you stop noticing it the way you stop noticing the engine noise, by making it part of the background. Sergeant Dombrowski, to your right, has not moved since the aircraft left the ground. His eyes are still closed, his lips have stopped moving, and he might genuinely be asleep, which is a thing that some men can do, and which you have always regarded with a mixture of admiration and mild suspicion. You have not slept. You are not going to sleep. Your mind is doing the thing it does before a jump, moving across the brief efficiently, checking each item in sequence, drop zone. The 506 assigned drop zones for tonight are designated the DZ and DZD, located south and southwest of the village of Sainte-Mère-Église on the Cotentin Peninsula. Your specific objective, E Company's objective, is to move south after landing, link up with other elements of the regiment, and secure the causeway exits from Utah Beach. The Utah Beach landings will begin at HH hour, which is 0630. Your job is to make sure those exits are clear before the infantry reaches them. The causeways matter because the ground behind Utah Beach is flooded. Rommel ordered the flooding. In the spring of 1944, German engineers opened sluice gates on the rivers and streams of the lower Cotentin, deliberately drowning the fields behind the beaches to a depth of 2 to 5 feet. From the air, these areas look like shallow ponds. From the ground, walking in the dark, they are indistinguishable from ordinary meadow until the water closes over your boots. This is what you are jumping into. You know where the flooded zones are. You memorize the maps. You know to move east and uphill after landing. You know the drop zone markings. The pathfinders went in 45 minutes ago to set up Eureka beacons and light panels on the DZ, so the pilots will have something to aim at. The pathfinders are men from the 502nd PIR. They jumped from small groups of pathfinder aircraft, 6 to 8 men per plane, ahead of the main force. Their job is to land in the dark in occupied France, alone or nearly alone, find the designated drop zone, set up their equipment, and wait for 800 aircraft to arrive overhead. If the pathfinders made it, if the equipment worked, if the pilots can see the signals through the cloud, there are many conditional statements in the briefings for this operation. You check the item in your mind, move to the next. Weapons. You know where everything is. You know the order of reach. Rifle first, then pistol, then knife. You have run this sequence in training until it is not a thought but a movement, until your hand goes to the right place before you have decided it should. Cricket. In your left breast pocket, underneath the map notebook, a metal cricket, a small toy clicker, pressed steel, the kind children use. The army bought thousands of them. One click-clack means, "Are you there?" Two click-clacks means, "Yes, I am here." This is your recognition signal for the first 24 hours. If you land in the dark and do not know where you are, which is likely, and you hear movement in the dark, which is also likely, you will give one click-clack and listen. If you get to back, the movement is friendly. If you get nothing or get something else, you move away from the movement and you do not make any more noise. One click-clack, wait. Two click-clacks. It is an absurd system. It is the system you have. Password flash, countersign thunder. Secondary, welcome. These words were chosen because they contain sounds that are difficult for German speakers to pronounce correctly. The C in thunder, specifically. If someone says thunder in the dark, that is information. You go over these details because going over them is useful, and because the mind needs something to do, and because the alternative is to think about the flooded fields, and the drop altitude, and the wind speed, and the numbers out of Sicily, and none of that is useful. The aircraft hits turbulence, a rough patch, a drop of 20 or 30 feet, a lurch sideways, and around you the men who were dozing open their eyes, and the men who are already awake grip whatever is within reach, and the aircraft recovers, steady again, and the engine noise resumes its normal register. Suarez, to your left, opens his eyes. He looks at you. He shrugs, a small shrug, minimal, the shrug of a man who has decided that the aircraft will either land safely or it will not, and that his opinion of the matter is not a factor. You find this shrug reassuring. You shrug back. He closes his eyes again. Below you, you cannot see it, but you know it is there. The channel is dark and cold. The water temperature in June in the English Channel runs between 50 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit. A man overboard in 55-degree water loses consciousness in approximately 1 hour and is dead within 6. The aircrew has life vests. The paratroopers do not. There is no room in the equipment configuration for a life vest, and the Army's calculation is that if a paratrooper goes into the channel, the equipment weight will solve the problem before the temperature does. You do not think about this calculation. You think about the drop zone. 35 minutes into the flight, the aircraft ahead of you disappears into cloud. You can see this barely through the porthole. The navigation light of the aircraft to your left front blinking its patient red pulse, and then the cloud takes it, and there is nothing but gray-white opacity, and the sound of your own engines, and the sense of the formation moving blind. Cloud cover was forecast. The meteorologists argued about the density, argued about the ceiling, argued about what the wind would do with it by 1 in the morning over the Cotentin. The final forecast said intermittent cloud at 2,000 to 4,000 feet, possible thickening over the peninsula, possible thickening. The cloud is thick. The pilots are flying instruments now, and they are also flying formation, which means maintaining prescribed separation from the aircraft around them by reference to instruments and time and nothing else, because you cannot maintain formation by visual reference if you cannot see the aircraft you are forming on. This is difficult flying. This requires pilots who have practiced instrument flying in formation, which is a highly specific skill, and the 101st transport pilots have done it, but the degree to which they have done it under conditions like tonight's, in overcast, with anti-aircraft fire beginning below them, is a matter of experience and nerve, and the specific calm that you either have or develop quickly. The anti-aircraft fire begins 20 minutes before the drop. You hear it before you see it, a distant thumping, rhythmic and irregular at the same time, like heavy doors closing, and then the aircraft begins to move in ways that feel purposeful but aren't. Small adjustments to altitude and heading as the pilots react to what they can see on the ground below. The porthole on the opposite wall shows you nothing. Then it shows you light, red and orange, in the cloud, flickering, the way firelight flickers behind frosted glass. Then a crack that you hear through the airframe, not the detonation, but the pressure wave, the physical fact of something large exploding near enough to be felt, and the aircraft shudders, and the man across from you makes a sound that is not quite a word. This is anti-aircraft fire. You know what it is. You have been briefed on it. You know the Germans have deployed 88mm flak guns along the Normandy coast and throughout the Cotentin, and that 88mm is the standard German anti-aircraft caliber, and that a single 88mm round can bring down a C-47 if it strikes the right place, and that the Germans will fire on every aircraft they can track, and that in the dark and the cloud they are firing on sound and on radar returns. You know all of this. The knowing does not change what it feels like to sit inside the aircraft while it happens. The jump master is at the door now. You can see him from your seat, a staff sergeant standing against the door, clipped in, watching out the small window beside the door, watching the ground below, timing, calculating. He has a stopwatch. He has the drop coordinates. He has been told what the pilots have been told. The Eureka beacons, if they are working, will give a signal, and the pilots will orient on the signal, and the drop will happen at the right time over the right place. If the aircraft drops sharply, 50 feet, 100, and then recovers, and around you the equipment swings, and the men press down into their seats, and there is a rattling that comes from something in the tail that you have heard on every flight, and which apparently means nothing is wrong. The light above the door, still red. Red means wait. Green means go. The green light is the thing you are moving toward, the fixed point at the end of the experience. When the light goes green, the sequence begins and the sequence has no optional steps. Stand, hook up, check your equipment, move to the door. The door, then nothing for a very brief moment, and then the static line catches and the chute opens and you are in France, or in a flooded field, or wherever the wind takes you. The aircraft climbs suddenly, a hard climb, engine straining, and then levels, and then drops again, a sustained fall of what might be 200 feet before the altitude stabilizes. This is evasive maneuvering. The pilot is moving the aircraft to avoid what he can see below. What he can see below is fire. From your porthole, looking past the man across from you, you can now see the ground. The cloud has thinned. Below, Normandy, black fields, dark hedgerows, the pale thread of a road, the gray shapes of buildings in a village, and across all of it, the crossing lines of tracer fire, red and green, rising from multiple points on the ground, curving upward in slow arcs that look almost graceful from altitude, the way things look graceful when they are moving at 200 miles per hour, and you are watching them from 1,000 feet up, and they are aimed at you. Tracer ammunition was manufactured so that gunners could see where their fire was going. 1 round in every 5, sometimes 1 in 4, is loaded with a phosphorus compound that burns visibly in flight. The visible rounds are the tracers. The rounds you cannot see are the other 4 out of 5. This information, which you received in a briefing at some point, rises into your mind now and sits there without being useful. The aircraft is at 800 feet. Standard jump altitude is 700 to 1200 feet. Below 700, the main chute may not have time to fully deploy. Above 1200, you are in the air longer and therefore visible and targetable longer. The nominal jump altitude for tonight was set at 700 feet. The pilots have been climbing and diving, and the altitude has not been stable. You will jump from wherever you are when the light goes green. The jump master turns from the door. He holds up both hands. 10 minutes. He holds up both hands again, and this time he is rotating his fists. Stand up, hook up. The command goes down the stick without words, a tap on the shoulder, passed from man to man, and everyone is standing now, bent slightly under the weight of their equipment and the low ceiling of the aircraft, and you reach up and clip your static line to the anchor cable that runs the length of the ceiling, and you tap the clip twice to make sure it is seated, and you feel the man behind you, Dombrowski, check your back equipment, the standard check, 4 points of contact, and you check Suarez in front of you. Pull his reserve chute handle cover, press it back, check his static line. Everything is attached. Everything is where it should be. The aircraft is shaking, not turbulence, anti-aircraft, the shudder of near misses. and the tracer light through the porthole is continuous now, crisscrossing. And somewhere outside there is a light that is not tracer, a brighter light sustained, and you understand that it is another aircraft burning. You do not say this. No one says anything. The stick is shuffling toward the door. You are moving in the way you have moved a dozen times before. The slight sideways lean required by the weight on your left leg, the reach with the right hand to the static line cable to keep your clip position, the careful step over the equipment bags of the man ahead of you. Suarez is 3 men from the door, then 2, then 1. The jump master has his hand on the doorframe, looking out, looking down, stopwatch, and then his hand comes off the doorframe and he is looking at the light, and the light is still red, and then the light is green. Green. Suarez goes. There is no pause. The stick is moving. The man ahead of you, a private from 3rd Platoon whose name you know but are not thinking of right now, goes, and then you are at the door, and the door is a rectangle of black wind and noise and the sound of the aircraft and the sound of the outside world, which is very loud and very cold, and the jump master's hand is on your arm, not holding, just touching, just indicating, here, this is the place, this is the moment. You step out. For a fraction of a second, less than a second, less than half a second, there is free fall. The slipstream hits you. The aircraft passes over you. You are below it, in its wake, tumbling slightly. And then the static line reaches its 15-foot extension, and the deployment bag is pulled from your back, and the canopy begins to stream out above you, a pale shape in the dark, and then it catches, and the opening shock hits you like a fist under both arms, hard enough that your breath goes out, hard enough that your teeth click together, and then you are swinging, and the canopy is full above you, and you are in the air over France. You are falling at approximately 15 feet per second. At 700 feet, you have approximately 47 seconds before you reach the ground. 47 seconds. The world has gone from the roar of the aircraft to a rushing sound that is the wind and nothing else. Below you, dark. Fields, hedgerows, the suggestion of a road. Above you, the canopy, pale in whatever dim light exists. Around you, nothing. No other canopies visible. The tracer fire is still going. You can see it curving up past you and past the aircraft now receding. The aircraft carrying 25 more men who have not yet jumped or have already jumped, and you cannot tell which, and one tracer round goes through your canopy. You feel it before you understand it. A sharp snap above you, and then a tug in the harness, and then the canopy is slightly different, asymmetric. One panel collapsed where the round went through the silk. The canopy is still open. You are still descending. The parachute is a T5, 28 feet in diameter. One panel, approximately 1/28 of the canopy area, is compromised. You are descending faster than you should be, and you are drifting. The asymmetric drag is turning you. slowly, counterclockwise, and you cannot fully control the drift. You can see the ground now. It is very close. You remember, bend the knees, feet and knees together. Turning to the wind, prepare to roll. You are turning into the wind. The ground is rising. You hit the left side first, boot, calf, thigh, hip, shoulder, the parachute landing fall, the roll that distributes the impact across the side of the body, the technique you drilled at Fort Benning until it was reflex. You roll, and the canopy collapses on top of you, silk everywhere, and you are on the ground in France, and you are breathing. Wet grass. Dark. Wind moving the canopy around you. You lie still for 3 seconds, which is what you were taught. 3 seconds inventory. Pain. Your left shoulder took the impact and it is making itself known. A deep ache, not sharp, not structural. Your legs, both present. Your equipment, the grease-walled bag with the rifle, is still attached to your left leg by the quick release. You release it. You pull the rifle out of the grease-walled bag. You assemble the rifle, butt to receiver, barrel group in, handguard seated, in approximately 20 seconds, which is within the train time but not a personal best. You chamber around. You lie still. You listen. The field around you is quiet except for the wind. The aircraft sounds are fading. The formation has passed through. The tracer fire has slowed. In the distance, to the northeast, there is a sound that might be a village dog or might be something else. You wait and it does not repeat. You are alone. This is the thing you were told to expect and were not certain you believed, that you would land and be alone, that the combination of cloud and wind and evasive maneuvering by the pilots and the simple geometric reality of 28 men jumping from a moving aircraft across a mile-wide drop zone would result in your being, at least initially, entirely by yourself in a dark field in occupied France. You are entirely by yourself. You reach into your left breast pocket and take out the cricket. One click-clack. You wait. The field is silent. One click-clack. The field is silent. You wait another 30 seconds. Silence. You do not click again. You begin gathering your canopy, bundling the silk as tight and small as you can, stuffing it under the hedgerow at the edge of the field. It will not fool anyone for long, but it will keep the canopy from acting as a marker for your location from the air or from a road. You check your compass. The compass says northeast. Your drop zone is east of where you jumped. You drifted west in the descent. East is toward the sound of the dog, or whatever it is. You move. Low, along the hedgerow, moving east, rifle in your hands, equipment as quiet as you can make it, which is not very quiet because 62 pounds of gear has opinions about silence. You do not know where you are. You know where you need to go. You begin moving toward it. The night is around you completely, and France is everywhere, and you are alone in it, with a compass and a cricket and a rifle and the memorized contents of a letter you will not unfold until this is over. You move along the hedgerow. You keep moving. The night is long, and you have a long way to go. And somewhere in the dark around you, you believe this, you hold to it. There are 27 other men with crickets in their pockets, looking for the same fields, moving toward the same rows. And one of them will hear your click-clack, and one click-clack will become two, and you will not be alone. Not for long. You move. The hedgerow is thick, and the field beyond it is dark, and France smells like cut hay and wet earth and the particular cold of an early morning in June. You move through it. One step and then another and then another. The night holds you, and you go forward into it, and the mission goes forward with you, in your hands and on your back, and in the steady step-by-step movement of a soldier who knows where he needs to be and is not yet there. You keep moving. The darkness thins, slightly, barely, the way darkness thins in the last hour before it decides to become morning. You move. The hedgerow ends at a ditch. You stop at the edge of it. The ditch is perhaps 4 feet wide and filled with black water. You cannot tell how deep it is without stepping into it, and you do not step into it without knowing what is on the other side. You crouch at the edge and listen. The water is still. No sound from the far side, except the wind moving through the top of the next hedgerow. You reach down with your rifle butt and prod the bottom of the ditch. 2 feet, maybe 2.5. You step across at the narrowest point, one long stride, right boot landing in 4 inches of water on the far bank, and you pull yourself up into the next field and crouch immediately, listening again for 10 seconds. Nothing. Fall in calm. You move. You have been moving for approximately 25 minutes since landing. In that time, you have covered perhaps 400 yards of ground. 400 yards across 2 fields, through 1 gap in a hedgerow, over a gate you did not want to climb because of the noise, and now across this ditch. 400 yards is not far. In training, on open ground, you can cover 400 yards in under 2 minutes. In the dark, in Bakash, with 62 pounds on your back and no certainty about what is on the other side of anything, 400 yards takes 25 minutes. This is the bocage. The bocage is the defining geographical fact of the Cotentin Peninsula, and no amount of aerial photography or map study or briefing has prepared you for what it actually is. The word is Norman French. It means mixed woodland, copse grove. What it means on the ground is this: fields of approximately 1 to 3 acres, each one enclosed by an earthen bank 2 to 4 feet high, topped with a dense growth of hawthorn, bramble, hazel, and oak that adds another 4 to 6 feet of impenetrable vegetation. The banks have been there for centuries. The Romans encountered them. The Normans grew them deliberately to mark property lines and contain livestock, and over 1,000 years they have become as solid as walls. You cannot see over them. You cannot see through them. You cannot push through them without making enough noise to be heard at 50 yards. To move from one field to the next, you must find a gap, a gate, a farm track entrance, a place where the bank has been cut for drainage, and move through the gap, which is also the place any reasonable defender would watch. You have gone through 2 gaps tonight. Both times you stopped at the gap for 60 seconds, listening before moving through. Both times there was nothing on the other side. You are aware that this method does not guarantee there will be nothing on the other side the next time. You check your compass again. East-northeast. You need to move east-northeast to reach the higher ground above the flooded zone. The drop zone, DZC, is marked on your map at a location that is now, by your best estimate, somewhere between a half mile and a mile to your east. Your best estimate is based on the drift you observed during descent, the time between jump and landing, and the wind speed. These are estimates built on estimates, and you know it. But east is east. You move along the inner face of the hedgerow bank, keeping low, moving in the shadow of the vegetation. The moon is behind cloud. The light is the uniform gray of deep overcast, not complete darkness, not even close to light, but the particular in-between that your eyes have adjusted to over the last 30 minutes, in which shapes are shapes without detail, and distance is approximate. A shape moves 50 yards ahead of you. You go flat. The shape is low to the ground, 4-legged. It pauses, turns toward you, and you can see, even in this light, that it is a cow, a large one, pale-colored, standing in the field you have just entered, looking at you with the mild interest of an animal that has been woken by something and is not sure what. The cow considers you for several seconds. Then it looks away and resumes whatever it was doing. You let out the breath you were holding. You have been taught that French cattle will not alert German sentries any more than English cattle alert English sentries, which is mostly true, and you move past the cow at a distance of about 15 yards, and it does not make any noise beyond the ordinary sound of a large animal shifting its weight. You reach the far hedgerow. There is a gap. You stop. You listen for 60 seconds. Beyond the gap, a farm track, rutted, muddy, running roughly north-south. On the far side of the track, another hedgerow, beyond which, if your map reading is correct, is a larger field that should be higher ground. Should be. You step onto the track, and you hear it. Footsteps on the track coming from the north, at a walking pace and with a particular sound of hobnailed boots on compacted mud, a sound you recognize because you have heard it in training when German officers wore their standard issue boots and American officers wore them sometimes too, having acquired a taste for the sound. You step back off the track. You press yourself against the bank. The footsteps are getting closer. You do not breathe. You are aware that not breathing is itself a kind of effort, that the body does not cooperate with its requirement and must be convinced, and you convince it by counting 1, 2, 3 very slowly, the way you learned to hold still in training when they tested whether you would flinch. 2 figures on the track. They are walking south, passing within 8 feet of where you are pressed against the bank. The figures are in field gray. German infantry, 2 men, moving at a patrol pace, not fast, not looking hard, the walk of men doing a routine task in the small hours of the morning when nothing has happened for 4 years, and why would tonight be different? They pass you. Their voices low in German. One of them says something and the other makes a sound like a short laugh. They do not slow. They do not look at the bank. They continue south. You count to 60 after the footsteps fade before you move again. You cross the track in 4 strides. You are through the far hedgerow gap and into the larger field before you allow yourself to exhale fully. The larger field is higher ground. You can feel it in the way the mud changes, drier, firmer, the grass stiffer underfoot. The flooded sun is below you now, to the west and south, and you can see it, or rather you can see the absence of it, the dark irregular shapes of flooded fields catching the faint overcast light in a way that dry fields do not, a dull metallic sheen in the geometry of the low ground. Men are in those fields. Some of them are already dead. You know this in the abstract way that you know many things tonight, as information that lives in the mind without fully connecting to the body, because if it connected to the body you would not be able to move. You keep moving. The field is 4 acres, roughly. You cross it at an angle, heading northeast, staying away from the center, moving in the shadow of the north hedgerow, which is taller than the others, old oak at the top, the kind of tree that has been growing since before Napoleon. You are approximately 30 yards from the northeast corner of the field when you hear it. Click-clack. 1 click-clack. From the northeast corner, from the shadow of the hedgerow where it turns. You stop. You reach into your pocket. Click-clack, click-clack. 2. The response. Silence. Then, from the corner, a shape resolves itself from the hedgerow shadow, a man crouching, moving toward you at a low shuffle. As he gets close enough, you can see the jump wings on his jacket, the same camouflage paint on his face, and the shape of a rifle in his hands. He stops 3 feet from you. He says very quietly, "Flash." You say, "Thunder." He exhales, not loudly, just the controlled release of tension you recognize because you are doing it too. "Corporal Hennessy," he says, 502. He is from the 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment. Not your regiment. The 502nd's drop zones are to your north. toward Saint-Martin-de-Vareville. He is as far from his DZ as you are from yours. Callahan, you say. 506. He nods. He points northeast. He holds up 3 fingers. 3 more. You follow him to the corner of the field, and there in the shadow of the oak hedgerow are 3 more men crouched, equipment still on their backs, faces painted, watching you arrive. One of them is from the 506th, a private named Ortega from a company, a man you recognize from the airfield but do not know well. The other 2 are from the 502nd like Hennessy. 5 men. None of them in the right place. This is the reality of the night, which no briefing prepared you for in the way that experiencing it prepares you. The 101st Airborne Division put 6,600 men in the air tonight. Of those men, the post-action assessments will eventually determine that fewer than 1 in 3 landed within a mile of their assigned drop zone. The combination of cloud, wind, evasive maneuvering by pilots under fire, early jumps ordered by nervous jump master, and the simple mathematics of dispersal across a 25-mile front produced a scattered pattern of men across the entire Cotentin Peninsula. Some men landed on rooftops. Some men landed in the flooded fields and drowned before they could release their harnesses. Some men landed in the channel. One man, Private John Steele of the 505th PIR, landed on the church steeple of Sainte-Mère-Église and hung there by his parachute for 2 hours, playing dead, while the battle for the village happened below him. You do not know any of this yet. You know 5 men in a hedgerow corner in a dark field in Normandy, and you know what the mission requires. Hennessy has a compass and a better sense of where he is than you do. He spent the crossing studying the maps and committed certain landmarks to memory. A church tower near Foucarville, a distinctive bend in a road near Auduville-la-Hubert, and he believes he can dead reckon to the high ground south of Saint-Côme-du-Mont, where E Company is supposed to consolidate. You listen to him lay this out in a whisper, finger moving across a map he holds flat against his knee, and you check the map against your own, and the 2 maps agree well enough. You have direction. You have 5 men. You move. The next 2 hours are the most patient you have ever spent. You move in a file, Hennessy on point, then Ortega, then yourself, then the 2 502nd men, last the other 502nd corporal. The file moves by the method you trained. 20 yards, stop, listen, move. 20 yards, stop, listen. When the hedgerow requires a gap, Hennessy goes through first, holds, signals, and the rest cross one at a time. You cross 7 fields. You cross 2 farm tracks. You go around a pond that is not on the map, which either means it is a flooded field or someone's map is wrong, and you elect to go around it either way. You hear aircraft overhead, transport aircraft still running, still dropping men somewhere to the east and north, and the tracer fire below them is thinner now, sporadic, not the continuous curtain it was at 1:30 in the morning. The initial drop is over. What is in the air now is the tail end, the delayed sticks, the aircraft that went around for a second pass. You hear far to the east, barely at the edge of audible, the sound of small arms fire. A brief exchange, sharp and discontinuous, and then silence, and then nothing. Someone found something, or something found someone. You keep moving. At approximately 3:15 in the morning, you reach a position on the high ground above the Douve River Valley that matches reasonably well the consolidation point marked on your map for E Company. It is a crossroads, two farm tracks meeting at a junction with a stone wall along the north side and an open field to the south. A ruined farm shed on the east corner, the roof collapsed, the walls still standing. There are men at the crossroads. Not many, 9 when you count them. None of them your platoon, none of them men you know well, but all of them from the 506, and one of them a staff sergeant named Waverly, a man from 3rd Battalion, who has a map and a radio that is not working, has been here since approximately 2:15 and has been collecting strays for the last hour. Waverly is 26 years old. He has a broken nose from a training jump in England 6 months ago that healed slightly sideways. He speaks very quietly, the kind of quiet that comes from being very sure of what he is saying. He says the radio is out. He has tried it 7 times. He cannot raise battalion, cannot raise regiment, cannot raise any of the channels on the frequency schedule. He does not know if the radio is damaged or if nobody else's radio is working either. He says the bridge over the Douve at Brevin is 3/4 of a mile south. That bridge is one of the 506 assigned objectives. It needs to be held to prevent German armor from moving north toward the beach exits. He has 14 men now, with yours. He needs the bridge secured before daylight. Daylight is approximately 2.5 hours from now. He says, "Are you coming?" You look at Hennessy. Hennessy is not 506, does not have this objective. But he came this far. And the bridge is a real thing, and the logic of the night has placed him here. Hennessy says, quietly, "Yeah, we're coming." Waverly nods. He lays out the route in 2 minutes. Not much of a plan. Movement down the track, approaching the bridge from the north. 2 scouts forward, main body back. Hold the bridge or blow it, depending on what they find. One of the men has a satchel charge. You move south. The track is straight here, running through flat ground above the river. The grass on both sides is tall, waist high in places, wet with dew, and moving through it makes a sound that you are aware of and cannot avoid. You are aware of many things you cannot avoid tonight. You add this to the list and keep moving. The bridge appears at the end of the track, A stone bridge, narrow, single lane, arching over the black water of the Douve. On the far bank, trees, dark, nothing moving. On this bank, nothing. The bridge is undefended, or appears to be. Waverly sends 2 scouts to the bridge. They move in a crouch, rifles up, taking 3 minutes to cover the 50 yards to the near end of the bridge. They reach it. They stop. They hold up a fist. No contact. Waverly signals. Advance. The 14 of you move to the bridge. It is a stone structure built in the 19th century. The stones fitted without mortar in the old Norman way. The arch spanning perhaps 30 feet over the river. The river below it is narrow, 15 feet across, and moving fast, dark water carrying broken branches and whatever the spring flooding left behind. You cross to the far side. No contact. Waverly positions men on both ends of the bridge and in the tree line on the south bank. You are assigned the south bank, left side, with Ortega and one of the 502nd men. You find a position at the base of a large elm tree, lying prone, rifle pointing south, down the road that runs from the bridge toward the village of Brabant. The road is empty. The fields on both sides of the road are empty. The night is quiet. You lie there, and France is around you in all directions, and your position is a bridge over a small river, and you have 14 men and a satchel charge and a radio that doesn't work, and somewhere to the north and east, thousands of other men are in similar fields, with similar problems, and similar radios that probably don't work either. And in 2.5 hours the sky will begin to lighten and the beach landings will begin, and the whole thing will enter a phase that is different from what this phase has been. But right now there is just the bridge, and the road, and the tree, and the sound of the Douve moving beneath you. You keep your eyes on the road. You keep your eyes open. The night is long, and morning is coming, and you are holding a bridge in France with 13 other men whose names you are still learning, and the mission is what it has always been, which is hold the thing that needs holding, and stay on your feet, and keep your eyes on the road, and wait for the light. You wait. The road is still. Ortega, 6 feet to your right, has found a way to rest the side of his face against the stock of his rifle without actually closing his eyes, a posture that looks like sleep and isn't, and you have seen men do this before. The body's compromise between rest and readiness, the thing the body learns when it understands that sleep is not available but something must be given. The Douve moves beneath the bridge. The elm tree is wide, and its roots are raised from the ground, and you are braced between 2 of them, which is not comfortable, and is also not the point. You watch the road. The road watches back, in the way that dark roads watch, with patience, with indifference, with the absolute neutrality of ground that has been here for centuries and will be here after whatever happens tonight is over. You're not neutral. You are very much here, in this moment, with your rifle and you're 14 men holding this bridge over this river, and the moment is the only thing there is. You watch the road. Nothing comes. Not yet. The light changes first in the east. Not sunrise. Not yet. Just a thinning of the dark. The black becoming a very deep gray, the outlines of the tree line across the road becoming slightly more tree-shaped and slightly less gas-shaped. Your eyes have been open for approximately 22 hours. They adjust to the new light without being asked, and the road becomes more road, and the fields on either side become more field. And you can see now the full length of the bridge behind you, the stone arch, the dark water moving beneath it. Nothing has come down the road. You have been on the south bank of the Douve for 2 hours and 20 minutes. In that time, no contact, no movement on the road, one sound from the tree line to the southeast that lasted for approximately 8 seconds, something large moving through brush, and then nothing. Waverly sent 2 men to investigate. They returned 5 minutes later and reported, cow. A second cow. The Norman countryside, it turns out, is full of cows. At 4:40 in the morning, the distant sound of aircraft intensifies again. This is the glider wave. The 101st Airborne Division's order of battle for the night called for a second aerial insertion following the main parachute drop gliders loaded with artillery, jeeps, anti-tank guns, medical equipment, and additional infantry following the C-47s in at a lower altitude and landing in the fields designated LZE and LZW slightly north of your position. The gliders are Waco CG-4S, each one carrying 13 combat-loaded soldiers and their equipment, towed by C-47s, then released to glide in, unpowered, at approximately 90 miles per hour and land on whatever the night offers. Landing a glider at 90 miles per hour in a dark Norman field strewn with Rommel's asparagus, vertical wooden poles planted to wreck glider landings, sometimes mined, sometimes connected by wire, is not a safe activity. Many of them make it. Many of them do not. You can hear the gliders now, the particular absence of engine noise that is different from the presence of it, the rush and hiss of unpowered flight, and then the sound of something very large landing fast in a field to the north. A crash that is different from an explosion, heavier and more complicated, the sound of wood and steel and canvas meeting earth at speed, and then silence, and then voices, and then the voices become purposeful. Somebody else is here now, somewhere to the north. Waverly sends a man, one man, fast, up the track to make contact with whoever landed and to confirm friendly or otherwise. The man comes back in 8 minutes. It is the 321st Glider Field Artillery Battalion, 2 guns, 1 jeep. The glider cracked up on landing, nose dug in, the fuselage folded, but both guns came through, and both gun crews are on their feet, and they are 1 field north of the bridge, and they know where they are, and they have a radio that works. They have a radio that works. Waverly goes north at a jog. You stay at the bridge. You have Ortega and 6 other men on the south bank now. Waverly reorganized the positions while he could see before full light, and you are the senior man present, which is not something you sought and is also not something you will decline. You do a round of the positions. 7 men spread across 40 yards of tree line. You check their fields of fire, their ammunition, whether they can see each other and signal without exposing themselves to the road. Adequate. Not ideal. The tree line is thinner on the right than you would prefer, and there is a gap in the hedgerow at the far right end that would allow approach from the southeast without being seen from most of your positions. You put Ortega at the gap. Ortega, who is from San Antonio, Texas, who has a younger brother currently in the Pacific, who has an ability to be still that you have observed and respected across 2 countries, takes the gap position without comment and disappears into it. The light continues to change. By 5:15 it is definitively morning, gray and overcast, the cloud unbroken from horizon to horizon, the color of old pewter, with a wind from the southwest that smells of seawater and something else, something you cannot identify yet, but which will identify itself shortly. At 5:30 you hear the naval bombardment begin. It starts as a distant concussion, not a sound so much as a change in air pressure, a push against the chest that is too low to hear and too physical to ignore. Then the sound catches up, a rolling continuous thunder from the north, from the direction of the coast, from the direction of the sea, and it does not stop. The naval guns. Allied warships offshore, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, are opening fire on the German coastal defenses. The USS Nevada, the USS Texas, HMS Warspite, HMS Ramillies, the French cruiser Georges Lagos, dozens of warships in a line offshore, their guns turned toward the shore, firing on the bunkers and gun emplacements and troop concentrations that stand between the sea and the land. The USS Texas is firing 14-inch shells. A 14-inch naval shell weighs 1,400 pounds. A 14-inch naval shell, fired from a ship 12 miles offshore, reaches its target in approximately 28 seconds. The Texas is firing 4 rounds per minute. From where you are lying, 3 miles from the coast, the bombardment sounds like a permanent storm, like the sky itself is being rearranged. The ground vibrates. Your teeth vibrate. Ortega, at his gap in the hedgerow, looks over his shoulder at you with an expression that is not quite surprise. You have all been briefed on the naval bombardment, but it's something that surprise becomes when it is actually happening rather than described in a room. You check your watch. 5:40. 50 minutes until H hour. Waverly returns from the artillery position at 5:50, moving fast down the track, not running but close to it. He reaches you and crouches. He says, "Regiment is on the radio. Partial contact." The 506th 1st and 2nd Battalions are assembling south of Saint-Marie-du-Mont, 2 miles northeast of your position. E Company is there, or some of E Company is there. Waverly does not know how many. The order is to hold the bridge until relieved. Reinforcements will come when they come. Do not blow the bridge. Allied armor will need it. Do not blow the bridge. You know this. You tell Waverly you noted it. He nods and moves to the north bank to reorganize the positions there. The bombardment continues. It will continue until H-Air, and then the landing craft will reach the beach, and then the men on the beach will be the ones who matter most, and the guns will shift their fire to support them. But right now the guns are everything. The sound of the war being made real at full volume in a grey Norman morning. At 6:15, German mortar rounds begin falling north of your position. Not on you, north, a quarter mile away, in the field where the gliders came in. The rounds are walking, each successive impact slightly closer than the last, the mortar crew adjusting, ranging in on the field artillery that is now setting up there. You do not know if the 321st has had time to return fire. The mortars are 81 mm. By the sound of them, you have been trained to identify calibers by sound, by the particular pitch of the round in flight and the character of the detonation. And 81 mm is the German standard mortar caliber, the Granatwerfer's 34, a weapon capable of putting a round on a target the size of a jeep from a range of 1,200 yards. The mortar crew is somewhere south or southeast of your position. You cannot see them from where you are. You think about the gap in the hedgerow on your right. If the mortar crew is ranging from the southeast, they may have observation on the road and therefore on the bridge. If they have observation on the bridge, they will eventually shift the fire to the bridge, because the bridge is the thing worth hitting. You begin moving right along the tree line, staying low, moving toward Ortega's position at the gap. The mortar rounds are still falling to the north, further spaced now. The crew found their target. The ranging is done. You reach Ortega. Ortega has seen something. He points southeast through the gap, across the next field, at the hedgerow on the far side, 300 yards. He holds up 3 fingers, points again. 3 figures at the far hedgerow. You look. 3 figures, prone, positioned in a gap in the far hedgerow. You can see them because one of them moved, slightly, just the adjustment of a position, and your eyes caught the movement in the gray morning light. One of them has a device on a tripod. Observation post. They are calling the mortar fire. You lie down beside Ortega and look at the 3 figures and the 500 yards of open field between you and them, and you do the arithmetic. The arithmetic is as follows. The mortar crew will eventually shift their fire to the bridge. When they do, the bridge will become untenable. The observation post is what enables the mortar crew to range and adjust. If the observation post is removed, the mortar crew fires blind. The M1 Garand has an effective range of 500 yards. The observation post is 300 yards away. Your position in the gap gives you a stable firing point. Prone, elbows braced, using the hedgerow bank on your left to stabilize the rifle. You look at Ortega. He is already looking at you. The mortar rounds have stopped. This is the moment before the mortar crew shifts their fire. You lay the front side of the Garand on the center figure of the three. You breathe out slowly. You fire. The sound of the shot in the gap is enormous. It fills the hedgerow, bounces off the bank, and you are already cycling. The Garand is semi-automatic. The round ejects. The next round chambers automatically, and you fire again, and Ortega fires beside you, and the three figures at the far hedgerow react. Two of them go flat immediately, one of them does not. You fire twice more. Then you and Ortega are moving back from the gap along the tree line west, because your position is now known, because the sound of your shots marks your location as clearly as a flare. You move 30 yards west. You go prone. You wait. No mortar fire comes. You wait another 5 minutes. No mortar fire. The observation post has either been neutralized or relocated. Either way, the mortar crew is blind. Ortega is breathing hard. Not from exertion, the 30 yards did not wind him, but the particular breathing of a man who has just done something that he has been training to do for 2 years and has now done for the first time under the conditions it is actually designed for. You are also breathing hard. You let it settle. At 6:30, on your watch, the naval bombardment changes pitch. The rhythm shifts. The pattern of fire becomes denser and more urgent, and from somewhere to the north comes a sound that is different from the bombardment, a lower, more continuous rumble, the sound of engines, the sound of many engines. Hour. The landing craft are hitting the beaches. Somewhere on Utah Beach, right now, men from the 4th Infantry Division are stepping off Higgins boats into the surf, and the surf is running at chest height, and the beach is before them. The exits from that beach, the causeways across the flooded zone, are what you spend the night trying to secure. You don't know yet whether they are secured. You don't know yet what is happening on any of the other beaches. You know your bridge. You know your 14 men, who are now 21 men because Waverly came back with 7 more from the 321st Artillerymen whose guns have been destroyed by the mortar fire, who are now infantry by circumstance, armed with carbines and pistols, and a single BR. 21 men. A bridge. A road. At 7:10 in the morning, the first Germans come down the road from the south. It is not a patrol. It is a column, infantry, moving in good order, a main body of approximately 40 men preceded by 2 cyclists moving north toward the coast at a quick march. They are moving toward the beach because the beach is where they have been ordered. They are following the road because the road goes where they need to go. The road goes through your bridge. Waverly is on the north bank. You are on the south. Between you, 21 men with rifles and one BAR. Waverly signals, "Wait." The cyclists are at the bridge. They are moving slowly, uncertain. They can see that the bridge is not undefended. Perhaps they can see the movement of a man in the tree line, or perhaps it is instinct, and they stop at the near end of the bridge, 50 yards from your position. The main body is 200 yards back, still moving forward, not yet seeing what the cyclists see. The cyclists look at each other. Waverly fires first. The barrel opens up a half second later, from the north bank, firing across the road into the column that is still moving, still condensed, still not fully understanding what it has walked into. You fire. The next 4 minutes are the loudest 4 minutes of your life, and also, in some strange way, the clearest. There is no ambiguity about what to do. There is only the target in your sight, and the trigger under your finger, and the next round, and the next, and the magazine running dry, and the reload, 8-round clip, press it in, the Garand's distinctive ping as the empty clip ejects, the new clip going in smooth, and fire again. The German column does not break immediately. They are trained soldiers. They go to ground and they return fire, and for approximately 3 minutes there is a full exchange across the road and through the tree line, and you are aware, in the way that you are aware of things that are very close and very fast, of rounds hitting the bank to your left, of the sound of someone shouting, of the BAA going silent for 20 seconds before starting again. Then the column begins to move back. They are withdrawing south, dragging their casualties, moving fast, and then faster, and then they are gone around a bend in the road, and there is nothing but the echo of it and the smell of it and the smoke from the muzzle of your own rifle. You count your men. 21. You count again. 20. One of the 321st men is down at the base of an oak tree on the north bank, and another man is with him, and from the look of it the answer is already settled. You hold the bridge. Waverly comes across at a run, crouching, and he looks at you, and you look at him, and he says, very quietly, "Okay." Just that. Okay. You nod. The road to the south is empty. The road to the north is empty. The bridge is intact. The doof is moving beneath it, indifferent, the way rivers are indifferent to the things that happen on their banks. You put your back against the elm tree. You reload. You check your ammunition. You have 62 rounds remaining, in addition to the 2 spare clips in your jacket pocket. Not comfortable, but not critical. The bar is in worse shape. Waverly's barman has 4 magazines. You will deal with that when you need to deal with it. The naval guns continue from the north. The sound of them is permanent now, like weather, like something that was always happening. The overcast is still solid above you, gray and close, and the wind is still southwest, And somewhere on the other side of all this grey morning, over the water you cannot see, there is England. And the war you knew about in briefings and training films and maps has become this tree, this bridge, this road, and 20 men in a tree line in France. You sit with your back against the elm. You breathe. The mission is still what it is. Hold the bridge. Reinforcements will come when they come. You think about worse from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who went out the door of the same aircraft just after you and landed God knows where. You think about your mother's letter, which is still in your pocket, still folded, still intact. You do not take it out. You watch the road. The road is quiet. The morning holds its breath. In the tree line across the river, a bird that does not know what morning this is begins to sing, and the sound of it is completely impossible in the context of everything else, and you sit with it for a moment before you stop noticing it, because the road demands your attention and the road gets it. You wait. You hold the bridge. The morning goes on, gray and enormous, and full of the sound of war, and you are 22 years old, and you are holding something that needs holding, and that is enough for right now. That is exactly enough. The first jeep comes from the north at 9:40 in the morning. You hear it before you see it, the particular sound of a Jeep engine, a Willys MB, a sound you know from 2 years of training in England and the United States, and which is completely distinct from anything the Germans use, the Germans favoring the Kübelwagen, lighter, higher pitched, a different quality of mechanical complaint. The jeep coming down the track from the north is American, and you know it before you see it, and you stand up from your position behind the elm tree for the first time since 4 in the morning, and your legs inform you in detail of their opinion of this. The jeep carries 3 men, a captain from the 506th, Captain Louis Nixon, the regimental intelligence officer, a man you know by name and reputation, who has a talent for appearing where things are happening, who travels light and moves fast, and who now stops his jeep at the north end of the bridge and looks across at you with an expression that is professionally neutral. He calls across, "Who's holding this bridge?" "Waverly, coming up behind you." "Sergeant Waverly, sir, 3rd Battalion." "Mixed elements, 506 and 502. Nixon looks at the bridge. He looks at the road to the south. He looks at the dead German cyclists still at the near end of the bridge, a fact that speaks for itself. "How long have you held it?" "Since 03:30, sir." Nixon nods. He gets out of the jeep and walks across the bridge and stands for a moment looking south down the road. Then he says, "Good work." And then he gets back in the jeep and drives north, because there are other things to check, and the bridge is checked. That is the entirety of the recognition. It is enough. By 10 in the morning, more men are coming down the track from the north, not reinforcements for your position specifically, but the general movement of the operation beginning to flow, men who found their units, and men who are still looking for their units and support personnel moving south now that the daylight makes movement possible and the first phase of the fighting has clarified who holds what. The picture, pieced together from fragments of radio traffic that reach you through Waverly's contact with the 321st Artillery Radio, is this. Utah Beach went better than expected. The 4th Infantry Division landed at approximately H hour, and through a combination of navigation error and strong current, the first wave came ashore nearly 2,000 yards south of its intended landing zone, which happened to be a section of beach with lighter German defenses than the intended zone. The first wave casualties at Utah were fewer than 200 men. By mid-morning, the beach is substantially cleared, and elements of the 4th Division are moving inland through the causeways. The causeways that your regiment spent the night securing. They are working. Omaha is different. The radio fragments say nothing clear about Omaha except that it is difficult, which is a military understatement of a scale you will not fully appreciate for days. At Omaha Beach, 6 miles east of Utah, the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions came ashore against the full strength of the German 352nd Infantry Division, positioned in the bluffs above the beach in concrete emplacements that the naval bombardment and the bombing runs did not destroy. The landing craft dropped their ramps in water too deep, and men went in over their heads with 60 pounds of equipment, and the beach was swept by machine gun and mortar fire from the high ground. By mid-morning at Omaha, the situation is not resolved. You do not know the number. The number will be established over the following days and weeks through the grim mathematics of casualty reports. At Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944, American forces will suffer approximately 2,000 casualties, killed, wounded, and missing in the first hours of the landing. You do not know this number yet. You know only that Omaha is difficult, and that the men who are there are having a different morning than the men who are here. At 10:30, your relief arrives. A full platoon from 1st Battalion, 506 PIR, 38 men, a lieutenant, ammunition, rations, and a working radio. They come down the track from the north in good order, and the lieutenant, a young man from Georgia named Forsyth, who has the look of someone who slept for approximately 2 hours and is not complaining about it, shakes Waverly's hand and takes the bridge. Waverly is ordered to take his men north to the regimental assembly area near Sainte Marie du Mont, where what remains of the scattered regiment is consolidating. You shoulder your rifle. You have been on your feet or on the ground in a firing position for 9.5 hours. The walk north is 2 miles. You walk it. The track runs through the same bocage you moved through in the dark, but it looks entirely different in daylight. The hedgerows are green, deeply, richly green, the heavy green of Normandy in June, which gets more rain than England and keeps it, and the fields between the hedgerows are thick with grass and wildflowers, and the deep lushness of ground that has been farmed and grazed for 1,000 years. You walk through it and notice this. The noticing is involuntary. The body, after 9 hours of maximum attention to threat, is doing something with the absence of immediate threat. And what it is doing apparently is noticing the color of the hedgerows and the smell of the grass. You let it. The sounds of fighting are still present, to the east, to the south, scattered, the ongoing work of the operation. But here on the track there is an interval of something that is not quiet exactly, but is quieter, and you move through it one step at a time. Ortega walks beside you. He has not said much all morning. This is not unusual for Ortega. He is economical with speech in the way that certain people are economical with everything, spending only what is needed and keeping the rest for later. He walks with his rifle across his body, muscle down, at the same pace you walk, and after a quarter mile he says, "You know that bridge was in the plan." You say you know. "We were supposed to be there with 100 men." You say you know that too. He is quiet for a moment. 21 is a lot fewer than 100, he says. You agree. He nods. He doesn't say anything else. The track bends east and then north again, and at the bend there is a farmhouse, a Norman farmhouse, stone thick-walled, the roof still intact, a kitchen garden along the south wall with early summer vegetables growing in it. In the doorway of the farmhouse, an old woman is standing. She is watching the track. She is watching you. She is perhaps 70 years old. She is wearing black, a black dress, a dark apron, a black scarf over white hair. In her hands she is holding something, a bowl or a cup. You cannot tell at this distance. You slow. She does not move back inside. As you come abreast of the farmhouse gate, she says something in French, looking at you. You do not speak French. Ortega speaks a little. He studied it for 1 year in high school, which is approximately the level of French that is useful for reading menus and not much else. And he stops and listens to her and then looks at you. He says, "She's saying, I think, she's saying she knew you were coming." You look at the old woman. Ortega tries a sentence in French. She responds. He listens. He tries again. He says, she says she heard the planes last night. She says she heard the planes and she knew. She knew. 4 years of occupation, 4 years of German soldiers on the roads, and German requisitions of food and fuel, and the general condition of living inside someone else's authority, inside the specific humiliation of a country that fell in 6 weeks and has been waiting since then for the thing that comes after. She knew the planes meant the thing that comes after. She is holding out the cup. You take it. It is cider, Norman cider, apple cider, the regional drink of this part of France, made from the apples in the orchards along the river, fermented and slightly sweet, nothing like the cider you know from Ohio, but clearly cider. You drink it. She watches you drink it, Her expression does not change in the way that expressions change when they are performing emotion. She is watching you drink the cider with the expression of someone doing a specific thing in a specific moment, not performing it. You hand the cup back. You say the one French word you know with certainty, merci. She nods. She goes back inside the farmhouse. You stand at the gate for a moment. Ortega is already moving. You follow him. The track continues north. The regimental assembly area at Sainte-Marie-du-Mont is a field south of the village, bordered by hedgerows on 3 sides and a stone wall on the north, with a farmhouse serving as the temporary command post. When you arrive at 11:15 in the morning, there are approximately 400 men in the field, less than 2/3 of E Company's assigned strength, and representing the consolidated remnants of scattered sticks from multiple drops, men who spent the night in various fields and ditches and farms and have made their way here over the last several hours. You find men you know. Sergeant Dombrowski, who jumped 3 positions behind you from the aircraft, is here. He has a field dressing wrapped around his left forearm. He landed on a farm implement in the dark, a fact he reports with the tone of a man settling a minor administrative dispute, and is otherwise entirely intact. Private Suarez, who jumped immediately ahead of you, is here. He landed correctly, linked up with his squad leader within 20 minutes, and has been in contact with the regiment since approximately 4 in the morning. He is eating a K ration with an expression of complete philosophical indifference to its quality. Words is not here. You ask about words. Nobody has seen words. You ask the company clerk, a corporal with a list, because there is always a man with a list, and the corporal checks the list and says words is not on it, which means he has not checked into any of the consolidation points the regiment has established. Not on the list does not mean dead. Not on the list means not yet accounted for. This distinction matters. You hold it. The company gathers through the morning. Men arrive singly and in pairs and in small groups, each of them with a story, where they landed, what they found, how they got here, and the stories are various and remarkable, and sometimes terrible, and they are told in the flat, efficient way that soldiers tell stories immediately after the thing happens, before the telling has been worked into a shape. You sit against the stone wall and eat a K ration. The K ration is a cardboard box approximately the size of a brick. It contains a tin of compressed meat. The specific variety is stamped on the lid. This one says chopped ham and eggs, a description that does not match the contents. A packet of biscuits, 4 cigarettes, a small tin of instant coffee, sugar tablets, a stick of gum, a packet of bouillon powder, and a can opener. The total caloric value is approximately 3,000 calories per day if you eat all 3 K ration meals. You eat the biscuits. The biscuits are dense and dry and taste of nothing particular, and are the most satisfying thing you have eaten since the white bread sandwich at Greenham Common 18 hours ago. You eat them slowly. The K ration was designed by Anshel Keys, a physiologist at the University of Minnesota, who was commissioned to develop a ration that could be carried by a parachutist. The design requirements were small enough to fit in a uniform pocket, light enough not to add significantly to the jump load, capable of sustaining a man through a day of combat, and edible without heating. Keys produced the first K rations in 1941. By 1944, they are being produced at a rate of approximately 100 million units per month. 100 million. One of them is in your hand. In Normandy, on June 6, 1944, and you eat it against a stone wall in a field and think about nothing at all for approximately 4 minutes, which is a luxury. At noon, Captain Winters, Richard Winters, E Company's commanding officer, a man from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, who makes decisions at the speed that decisions need to be made without appearing to rush, calls the assembled company together. The company is 2/3 strength. Winters takes account of this without dwelling on it. He says, the 506th second phase objective is the village of Carentan, 8 miles south, which controls the junction between the Utah and Omaha beachheads. If Carentan is not taken, the two beach landings remain separated and the lodgment is not secure. The regiment is moving south. You have been awake for 26 hours. You stand up. You check your ammunition, 62 rounds, which you noted this morning and have not used since the bridge, plus the 2 spare clips, which brings you to approximately 90 rounds total. Not enough for sustained contact, but you will move through supply points, and the regiment has a resupply system, and you will deal with the ammunition when you reach it. The rifle is clean. You cleaned it this morning at the bridge position while the road was quiet, using the small cleaning kit in your jump jacket pocket, a few patches, a bottle of oil, a bore brush. The M1 Garand requires relatively little maintenance under field conditions, but it requires something, and you give it something at every opportunity because the rifle is not an inconvenience you carry. It is the reason you are a problem rather than a solution for the people you are pointed at. You fall in with E Company. The company moves south through the bocage. The bocage in daylight is still the bocage, the same enclosed fields, the same narrow gaps, the same impenetrable hedgerows. But in daylight the movement is faster, the navigation more certain, the anxiety of not knowing what is in the next field slightly reduced by the ability to at least see across this one. The company is a different organism in daylight than the scattered men of the night before. It is a company again, squads, platoons, a command element, communication between elements, mutual support. The individuals are the same people who spend the night alone in dark fields. The organization has reasserted itself, and with it a kind of confidence that is not the confidence of not being afraid, but the confidence of being part of something that has a shape. You move south. By 2 in the afternoon, you have covered 1.5 miles and engaged in 2 brief firefights. The first, a small German patrol of 6 men who were moving north, and encountered E Company's point element. Contact lasting approximately 4 minutes before the patrol withdrew. The second, a sniper in a farm building who fired 3 rounds before being located and dealt with. The sniper is the worst kind of problem in Bokash country. A single marksman, positioned in a building or a hedgerow or a tree, can halt an infantry company's movement along a road. The company must go to ground, locate the sniper, develop a flanking route that avoids his field of fire, maneuver a fire team to a position where he can be suppressed, and then assaulted, all while remaining concealed from any additional positions he may have prepared. The process takes time. Everything in the Bokash takes time. The 506th Advance South will eventually require 72 hours to cover 8 miles. You do not know this yet. You know this field, and the next gap in this hedgerow, and the farm building on the right side of the road that needs to be cleared before the column can move past it. You move toward the farm building. The farm building is stone, like all the buildings in this part of Normandy, with a slate roof and 2 windows facing the road and a door on the south side. Standard procedure: 1 team on the door, 1 team covering the windows, a 3rd team ready to move on signal. You are on the door team. You are 3 men, yourself, a private named Kowalski from 2nd Platoon, and a corporal named Brandt who has done this before and moves like someone who has done it before, which is the best possible thing he can be. Brandt signals. You move to the door. The door is wooden, old, slightly warped in its frame. This is relevant because a warped door is not a door you can simply kick. It is a door you must hit at the frame near the lock, and you do shoulder into the frame, and the door gives and you are inside. Empty. Storage room, farm equipment. A pile of sacking in the corner, the smell of oil and cut wood, and something animal, a smell that has nothing to do with what you were looking for. You clear the room in 8 seconds. You signal clear. The column moves. You fall back into your position in the column. The afternoon continues south. By 4 o'clock, you have covered 2.5 miles from the assembly area, and the company has paused at a crossroads, while the command element establishes where they are and what is ahead and what the regiment's current orders are. You have a 12-minute break. The company command says 12 minutes, which is a specific enough number that you believe it, and you sit at the base of a hedgerow on the east side of the road and drink from your canteen. The canteen holds 1 quart. You have 1 quart of water and a packet of purification tablets, and there is a stream on the map approximately a quarter mile east, which you will not get to in 12 minutes. You drink half the quart. You put the canteen back. The afternoon is cool, mid-60s, overcast still, the cloud cover that has been with you since you arrived in France showing no sign of moving. This is, in military terms, mostly good. It limits German air observation. It keeps the temperature bearable for men moving with equipment, and it means the ground is not baking under June sun. But you will not complain about sun. You sit at the hedgerow and look at the road and eat the last of the K-ration biscuits and think briefly and without dwelling on it about words. Not on the list. There are 47 men from the 506 who are not on the list. The regiment will be accounting for men for days. The word will come from somewhere, from a consolidation point, from a prisoner exchange, from a burial record, from a man who shows up late with a story about a farm and a French family and a week hiding in a hayloft while the operation moved around him. These things happen. You know this. You hold to it. The 12 minutes end. You stand up. You check your equipment. You move south with the company. The road continues through bocage, through crossroads, through a small cluster of farm buildings that were someone's village and are now positions in a military operation, through a Normandy afternoon that smells of grass and stone, and the distant cordite from the direction of the coast where the fighting is not over and is not close to being over. You move. The company moves with you. The mission is still what it is. South, toward Carentan, toward the junction of the beachheads, toward the place where this morning's scattered and costly and improbable operation becomes the thing it needs to become, a front, a lodgment, a held line. You are part of the holding. You have been part of it since you stepped out of the aircraft door at 1:30 in the morning 16 hours ago, and you will continue to be part of it for as long as your legs carry you and your rifle functions and the company needs the place in the line that is yours. You move through the afternoon. The bocage goes on. The road goes on. You go on. The company stops at a farmhouse at 6:15 in the evening. Not because the mission stops, because the light is changing and the reconnaissance of the next mile of road requires information that has not yet come back from the two scouts who went forward 40 minutes ago, and because Captain Winters is a man who does not move his company down a road in the bocage without knowing what is on that road, and so the company stops and waits for the scouts. The farmhouse is abandoned. You know it is abandoned before you enter it. The door is open, which people do not do voluntarily when there is fighting nearby, and the kitchen garden has been harvested in a hurry, the beds stripped, the tools not put away. Someone left quickly. Someone took what they could carry and left everything else. You are assigned to clear the farmhouse with a 4-man fire team. You move through it. Ground floor, kitchen, a main room with a large stone fireplace, a small room that was probably a bedroom, a stone-floored back room used for storage. The kitchen has a table with 2 chairs. On the table, a half-eaten loaf of bread, several days old now, and a blue ceramic bowl, a shelf above the fireplace with a clock. Stopped, the hands pointing to 7:20, whatever day that was, and 2 photographs in wooden frames. One photograph shows a man and a woman standing in front of this farmhouse, in their good clothes, at some point in the 1920s or 1930s, a formal photograph, the kind made for important occasions. The other shows 3 children in a garden. You look at the photographs. You do not touch them. You clear the rest of the farmhouse, upper floor, 2 bedrooms, a narrow staircase, in 4 minutes. Empty, clean, everything in its place except for the absence of the people. You come back down to the kitchen. Brand is in the kitchen. He has found the bread and is looking at it without touching it. He says, "Think it's still good?" You look at the bread. It is hard at the edges and soft in the middle, in the way that bread gets when it is 3 days old in a cool stone room. You cut it with your trench knife. It is still good. You divide it among the 4 of you, equal portions, and eat it without discussion. It is bread and you are hungry, and the people who left it have more urgent things to worry about than the bread. This is the calculation you make. It is not a comfortable calculation, but it is the one available. The bread is dense and slightly sour, a sourdough leavened with a starter, the kind of bread that has been made in Norman kitchens for as long as there have been Norman kitchens. And it is the best thing you have eaten today, which is not high praise for the bread, but is accurate. You eat it. You sit at the table with 2 chairs, and you eat Norman bread from a Norman farmhouse, and the war is outside, on the road and in the fields, and for this interval it is simply a table, bread, 4 men, a window with evening light coming through it, gray and fading. The scouts come back at 7. They report the road south is clear for 3/4 of a mile to a crossroads where there is evidence of recent German vehicle traffic, tire tracks in the mud, a discarded ration tin, a position dug into the hedgerow on the east side of the crossroads that shows signs of recent occupation. The position is empty when the scouts reach it. The Germans are withdrawing south. They are withdrawing because the day has gone badly for them. This is the larger picture assembled from radio traffic and the scouts' report and the general direction of fire throughout the day. The Atlantic Wall, which was supposed to stop the invasion on the beach, has not stopped it. The beach landings at Utah, Gold, Juno, and Sword have all achieved their initial objectives. Men are ashore, armor is ashore. The beachheads are being held and expanded. Omaha is the exception. Omaha is held, but barely, and at a cost that the other beaches did not pay. But the wall did not hold. Rommel believed that if the Allies got off the beaches, they could not be stopped. The Allies are off the beaches. The German response now is withdrawal and consolidation, pulling back to defensible lines, waiting for the armored reserves that Rommel has been demanding and that Hitler has been withholding, convinced the Normandy landing is a feint and the real landing is coming at Pas de Calais. The deception is still working. The armored reserves are still at Pas de Calais. This matters. Every hour the German armor stays at Pas de Calais is an hour the Allies have to consolidate and deepen their lodgment. It is an hour the engineers have to put down temporary harbors, the Mulberry harbors, enormous prefabricated concrete and steel structures being towed across the channel right now tonight to be assembled offshore at Omaha and Gold Beach into temporary ports capable of unloading 10,000 tons of supplies per day. 10,000 tons per day. This is the industrial scale of the thing you are part of. From where you are sitting, at a kitchen table in a Norman farmhouse, the industrial scale is not visible. What is visible is this room and this table and the gray window and the bread. The company moves at 7:30. The evening is cooler now, the light nearly gone, and you are moving with a different quality of tiredness than you had this morning. This morning the tiredness was the tiredness of no sleep, which the body processes by sharpening certain responses and dulling others, a manageable condition. This evening the tiredness is deeper, the tiredness of a day in which the body has been used continuously at or near its full capacity, and the sharpening mechanism is becoming less reliable, and you know this, and you account for it. You stay close to the man in front of you. You watch where his feet go. The column moves south along the road, past the crossroads where the Germans dug in and withdrew, past the burned out truck on the left side of the road that is German, a Opel Blitz, the standard German cargo truck, the cab stove in, the cargo bed scorched, past a field where two gliders came in, and one of them is intact and one of them is in 4 pieces. The intact glider is a Waco CG-4A. You walk past it close enough to read the tail number. The access door on the nose is open and the cargo has been offloaded. You can see the scuff marks on the ground where something on wheels was pushed out, probably a jeep or a small artillery piece. The glider pilot is not with the aircraft. He went with the man he brought in. The glider that is in 4 pieces is a different story. You do not look at it long. You keep walking. At 8:30, the company reaches a position on the high ground south of Angleville-au-Plain, a small village of stone houses and a Norman church with a square tower, unremarkable except that the church has been turned into an aid station. 2 American medics are inside it, treating casualties from both sides, German and American, in the traditional sanctuary arrangement that has been observed in this region since the medieval period. You do not know this is happening inside the church as you pass it. You know only the square tower and the company moving past it, and the road continuing south, and the evening light going gray-blue and then dark. The company stops at a defensive position at 9:15. The position is a farm at the intersection of 2 tracks, with a large stone barn on the east side and a walled garden on the west. Waverly, who has been with the company since the assembly area, absorbed into E Company's chain of command, with the straightforward efficiency of a wartime organization that has no time for administrative formality, assigns the positions. You get the barn. The barn is a large building, 15th or 16th century, the stones fitted without mortar in the Norman way. The interior is dim and smells of old hay and cattle, a heavy organic smell that is not unpleasant after a day of cordite and diesel and the particular smell of a day in which things have burned. The hay is old, last autumn's, piled in the east corner. The cattle are gone. The family took them, or the Germans took them, or they wandered off on their own. Which cattle will do when the fences are left unmanned? You assign fields of fire. 6 men in the barn, covering the south approach to the intersection and the east track. You put 2 men at the large door facing south. It gives a good field of fire down the track for 300 yards. 2 men at the window on the east wall and 2 men in the loft, which gives elevation and therefore range. You do the loft yourself with a private named Webb who has said nothing to you today except yes and no and yes, corporal. The economical speech of a young man who has just turned 19 and is operating in a state of such focused attention that words are a resource he is conserving. The loft has a loading door on the south end that opens over the track. Through this door you can see the road and the south field and distantly the beginning of the next section of bocage. You settle into the hay at the loading door. You put your rifle across your knees. The light is fully gone now. June 6th has become June 7th without ceremony, in the way that nights follow days when you are not watching for the transition. You are watching for other things. You sit in the hay and you watch the road, and the road is dark and quiet, and the fields beyond the road are dark and quiet, and somewhere south, between your position and the village of Carentan, which is the next objective, the German line is reforming, and tomorrow it will need to be tested. But tomorrow is not yet. Webb, 6 feet to your left, has his rifle pointing through a gap in the loft boards on the east side, not the loading door. He found his own gap, the instinct of a 19-year-old who understands that you do not put your rifle through the only obvious hole. He is looking through his gap at the east track. He says, very quietly, without looking at you, "Is it always like this?" You consider the question. He means, is combat always like today? Is this the normal rate of experience? The jump, the dark, the scattered landing, the bridge, the firefight, the afternoon moving through bocage, the farmhouse, the bread, the barn. You have done this for 1 day. You have no baseline. You tell him you don't know. He nods. He goes back to his gap. You go back to your door. The night settles. The sound of fighting, which has been present all day in various directions and distances, is diminished now, sporadic, the occasional exchange far to the east, and the intermittent sound from the direction of Omaha, where whatever is happening is still happening. But the immediate vicinity is quiet, the way that fields and farms are quiet at night when the day's violence has concluded without resolution and both sides have stopped to wait for what comes next. The Germans have stopped to wait. You have stopped to wait. The pause is not peace. It is the pause that happens when 2 things in motion collide and then separate and then reassemble each of them calculating the next approach. You understand this. You watch the road. At some point in the night, you do not check your watch, you simply register the change. It begins to rain. Rain in Normandy in June is not unusual. The weather that delayed the operation, that made the meteorologist argue and made Eisenhower look at a chart at 4:15 in the morning and say go, was the edge of a front that is now moving east across the peninsula, bringing a light, steady rain that darkens the road and the fields and drips from the loft boards and makes the hay smell more like hay. You do not move from the loading door. Rain makes noise. Rain covers the sound of movement. Rain is a reason to be more alert, not less. You stay at the door. The rain is not cold. It is June rain, mild, close to skin temperature, the kind of rain that is more mist than drops and that soaks slowly and completely. Your jacket is water resistant in the way that wool is water resistant, which means it accepts water reluctantly and eventually accepts it. Your boots are wet. Your trousers are wet above the knee. You do not think about being wet. You think about the road. At some time between midnight and 1 in the morning, Webb says, still quietly, still without looking away from his gap, my sister writes me every week. You wait. He says, she writes about the high school, who's going with who, what the weather's like, who won the football game. He pauses. She knows where I am, generally. She doesn't know, like tonight. She doesn't know tonight. You don't say anything. He says, I'm glad she doesn't know tonight. You agree. The rain continues. You think about your mother's letter. You think about Noble County, Ohio, in June, the hills rolling east of Columbus, green the way they get in summer, the oil-filled roads, and the quiet streets of Caldwell, and the hardware store where your mother keeps the books and probably tonight is not sleeping either. In the particular not sleeping of someone who knows that something is happening somewhere that involves the person they love most. She knows you are in England. She does not know that England was 12 hours ago. You think about writing to her. When you write, you will not say where you are, or what you have done, or what the barn smells like, or what the bread tasted like from the Norman farmhouse. You will say, I am well. The weather here is. I am with good men. You will say the things that are true and that can be said, and she will read between them. And that will be enough, because it has to be. You have been awake for 31 hours. You are aware of this in the same way you are aware of the rain as a fact about the conditions relevant and not deniable. You are also aware that awareness is the thing that is keeping you here at this door watching this road, and that awareness is a finite resource, and that the 31 hours is a debt that will be paid. But not now. Now you watch the road. The rain thins. The night goes on. At some point Waverly comes up to the loft and taps your shoulder and says you have 2 hours, and the next man, a private from 1st Platoon, takes the loading door, and you move back into the hay and you lie down. You are asleep before the thought of being asleep has finished forming. You do not dream. Or if you dream, it is nothing you carry back when Waverly taps your shoulder again, and it is 4 in the morning, and the rain has stopped, and the air through the loading door smells like wet Norman hay, and the road is the same road it was when you left it. You go back to the door. Webb is still at his gap. He nods when you return, the nod of a man acknowledging a reliable thing, and you nod back, and you put your rifle across your knees, and the loading door is before you, and the road is before the loading door, and the morning is coming, somewhere behind the overcast and the dark, the way it always comes, indifferent to what was done the day before. The dead German cyclists at the bridge. The man from the 321st at the base of the oak tree. The column on the road that came south and went south again. The day is done. The next day is beginning. You watch the road. The fields beyond the road are taking shape in the early gray light, vague at first, then more distinct, the bocage reasserting its impenetrable geometry, field by field, hedgerow by hedgerow, the ancient enclosures of Norman farmland that will not move for armor or artillery or the weight of 150,000 men. They were here before the war. They will be here after it. You watch the road between them. The first birds begin. Not many. A single bird somewhere in the east hedgerow. A tentative sound, the testing of the morning. Then a second bird, further south. Then the sound builds the way it builds. Incrementally, a chorus assembling itself without instruction, the oldest kind of order. The light strengthens. The road is still empty. You breathe in and out. The morning comes the way it always comes, and you are here to receive it at a loading door in a Norman barn on the second day, which will ask of you what the first day asked, and perhaps more, and which you will meet the same way, one field at a time, one gap at a time, one road at a time, the mission staying the same even as the details change around it. You are not the same man who drove to the recruiting office in Caldwell, Ohio. That is not a complaint. It is what the work makes of you, the way the work makes of everyone who does it, something more compressed than before, more particular, with less room for the unnecessary, and more attention for the thing that is directly in front of you. The thing directly in front of you is the road. The road, the fields, the morning, the second day. You are young enough that this is still the first war you have ever seen. You are in France. The road is quiet. For now, the road is quiet. And the birds are singing, and the light is coming, and the hay in the loft smells like last autumn, and Webb is at his gap, reliable and silent, and the company is in its positions around the farm, and the line holds. The line holds. That is what there is to know this morning. The line holds, and the morning comes, and you are here. You watch the road. The second day begins the way the first day ended. With waiting, with the road, with the particular gray light of a Normandy morning that does not arrive so much as accumulate, a slow brightening at the eastern horizon that works its way across the overcast and eventually reaches the loading door of the barn where you are sitting with your rifle across your knees, watching the track that runs south toward Carentan. The track is empty. It has been empty since midnight, and it is still empty at 5 in the morning, which is either because the Germans have withdrawn further south than expected, or because they are waiting for something and the something has not yet arrived. You know better than to take comfort from an empty road. An empty road in Bokash country is a fact about the last 30 seconds, not a fact about the next 30. You watch it anyway. Webb has been relieved. The private from 1st Platoon is back at the gap in the loft boards on the east side, and you are at the loading door, and between you the barn is quiet except for the sound of 3 men sleeping in the hay below. The sound of men who have spent 24 hours in continuous operation and have been given 2 hours and are using every second of them. You did not sleep after your 2 hours. You tried. You lay in the hay with your eyes closed, and the body was grateful for the horizontal position and the warmth of the hay. But the mind kept moving, not anxious, not fearful, just moving, running through the bridge, and the road, and the column, and the old woman with the cider, and the farmhouse, photographs, and the bread, and the rain on the loading door, moving through the day, the way the mind moves through things it has not yet put away. So you came back to the door. The road is still empty. At 5:20, Sergeant Waverly comes up to the loft. He does not climb all the way up. He comes to the top of the ladder and rests his arms on the loft floor and looks at you. He says, "Orders came through at 0400. The regiment is moving south at 0700. E Company has the left flank. The objective is a road junction 2 miles south of Angleville-au-Plain, which controls the northern approach to Carentan." He says, words came in at 0330. You look at him. He says, words is fine. He landed in a flooded field, went in up to his chest, lost his rifle, spent 4 hours working his way east to dry ground. He linked up with a group from the 501st and spent the night with them. He came into the assembly point when the route opened up this morning. You say, "He's okay." Waverly says, "He's okay, wet. No rifle, but okay." You nod. Waverly goes back down the ladder. You turn back to the road. The road is still empty, but the weight of the previous 20 hours shifts slightly in the way that weight shifts when one of the uncertain things resolves. You did not allow yourself to be certain about words. You held the distinction. Not on the list is not dead, and the distinction held and worse came in wet and without a rifle at 3:30 in the morning. And that is the best possible version of a thing that could have gone many other ways. You breathe. You watch the road. By 6 in the morning, the company is stirring. Men rolling out of their positions, eating whatever they have, redistributing ammunition, checking equipment in the early light. The barn fills with the sounds of this. The metallic click of weapons being checked, the papery rattle of K-ration boxes, low voices, the particular sounds of men preparing to do the same thing again that they did yesterday. You come down from the loft. You eat the last of your K-ration, the breakfast version, which contains a tin of something described as veal loaf and a packet of instant coffee and 4 cigarettes. You do not smoke, and you trade the cigarettes to a private from 3rd Platoon for his extra biscuits, an exchange he accepts with the enthusiasm of a man for whom cigarettes are a form of currency more reliable than money. You drink the instant coffee. The instant coffee requires hot water, which you do not have, and so you dissolve it in cold water from your canteen, which produces a liquid that is technically coffee and is otherwise difficult to defend. You drink it. The caffeine is real, whatever the coffee is. You check your rifle. The M1 Garand has been through a jump, a night in the field, a morning of combat, an afternoon of movement, a night of rain, and another morning, and it is functioning. You run a patch through the bore. You check the gas system. You load a fresh clip and chamber around, and set the safety. You have 98 rounds of .30 caliber ammunition. This is more than you had last night. A resupply came through at the assembly area, and Waverly made sure each man had at least 100 rounds. You have 98 because you used 2 rounds this morning. Doing a function check, a single pair of shots into the hedgerow at 0545 to confirm the rifle was cycling cleanly after the rain. 91 rounds. It will have to do. The company forms up at 6:50 and moves south at 7 as ordered, on the left flank of the regimental line, which puts you on the west side of the road running south from the farm junction. Waverly has you in the 3rd Squad, 2nd Element, a position in the column that is not the point. The point is the most exposed, and not the rear. The rear is the most isolated, but the middle, which is its own particular condition. You can see the front of the column and the back of the man ahead of you, and you know what the column knows when it knows it, and you move when the column moves, and stop when the column stops. The column moves into bocage. The bocage on the 2nd day is the same bocage it was on the 1st day. This is not a surprise and is also in some way a surprise. The bocage does not care that a day has passed, that things have been decided in it, that men have crossed it and held parts of it and died in parts of it. The hedgerows are exactly as they were at midnight, and as they were when the Romans walked through them, and as they will be in 10 years and 50 years and 100. They are the feature, and everything else is the event. You move through the feature. At 7:40 the column stops. Contact ahead. You go to the ditch on the west side of the road. a drainage ditch, wet, your third wet ditch of the last 24 hours, which is a number you note without bitterness, and you wait. The sound of the contact is up ahead, rifle fire, then a bar, then what sounds like a German MG-42 machine gun, which you can identify by its rate of fire. The MG-42 fires at 1200 rounds per minute, which sounds like a long tearing sound rather than individual shots. A mechanical tearing that is distinct from any American weapon and which you have heard in training recordings and are now hearing in the field, and the two are not the same experience. 1200 rounds per minute. The American M1919 Browning machine gun fires at 400 to 500 rounds per minute. This disparity in fire rate is one of the tactical facts of the European theater. German machine guns fire faster than American ones, which means German machine guns must be flanked rather than engaged directly, because engaging directly means absorbing more fire than you can return. Flanking takes time. The column waits. You are in the ditch for 14 minutes before the firing stops and the column begins to move again. You do not know what happened at the point. You find out 2 hours later, in the way that you find out things in an infantry column, from the man ahead of you, who heard it from the man ahead of him, who saw part of it. 2 men from 1st Platoon neutralized the machine gun position by working west through the field on the left side of the road and approaching the position from the flank. The position was a 2-man crew with an MG-42 in a prepared firing pit cut into the base of the hedgerow. It is no longer a position. 2 men. This is the fundamental arithmetic of bocage fighting. 2 men moving through a wet field for 12 minutes can change the calculation for 100 men on a road. You think about this while the column moves. The morning passes in this way. Movement, stop, wait, movement. The progress measured in hundreds of yards rather than miles. The bocage offers ground the way the bocage offers everything, reluctantly, in small increments, at a cost. By 10 in the morning, the company has covered 1 mile. 1 mile. At 10:15, you pass through a small cluster of farm buildings that is marked on the map as Vialleville, not Vialleville-sur-Mer, which is on the coast at Omaha, but a different Vialleville, an inland Vialleville, a name common enough in this part of Normandy that it appears several times on the map. 3 stone farmhouses, a barn, a well in the center of the cluster. No sign of the inhabitants. In the doorway of the middle farmhouse, a child's wooden toy, a horse on wheels, painted red, left in the doorway as though set down for a moment. You walk past it. The company walks past it. The road continues south. By noon, the company is at the road junction that was the morning's objective, a crossing of 2 tracks on the high ground above the Dew Valley, with open fields to the south and the northern edge of Carentan visible in the distance. Rooftops, a church tower, the water tower that appears on the maps, 3 miles. The junction is undefended. The Germans have pulled back into the town itself, apparently consolidating in the streets and buildings rather than holding the open ground north of it. Captain Winters assesses the position. The regiment needs to take quarantine. Quarantine is the hinge between the Utah and Omaha beachheads. If quarantine falls to the Americans, the two beachheads merge and the lodgment is continuous. If quarantine holds for the Germans, the two beachheads remain separated and vulnerable to being defeated in detail. This is why quarantine matters. But taking quarantine is not today's assignment for E Company. Today's assignment was the road junction. The road junction is taken. The company will hold it while the regiment prepares the assault on the town, which will come tomorrow or the next day when the full force of the regiment is assembled and the approach routes are reconnoitered. You are done moving for today. You find your position, a hedgerow on the south side of the junction, oriented toward quarantine, and you build a fighting position in the base of the bank. This is straightforward work. You use your entrenching tool, a folding shovel carried on your belt, to cut the roots at the base of the bank and scrape out a shallow depression large enough to lie in, giving you ground cover from the front and the earthen bank as overhead protection from indirect fire. You do not need a deep hole. You need a shallow one with the right orientation. It takes 20 minutes. The fighting position is done. You lay your rifle across the bank and look south at Carrington. The town is 3 miles away and quiet. You can see movement in the far distance. Vehicles, figures, the activity of a town that knows what is coming. But from here it is abstract, the way the map was abstract, the way the briefings were abstract, the way everything is abstract until it is not. It will not be abstract tomorrow. You eat a K ration. You drink the last of your water and refill your canteen from a stream that runs along the east side of the junction field, dropping a purification tablet in and waiting the required 30 minutes before drinking. The tablet turns the water slightly chemical in taste. You drink it anyway. The afternoon is the longest part. After the morning's movement and contact, the afternoon stillness has a particular quality, not comfortable exactly because the position is a shallow depression in a hedgerow bank in Normandy in June, but a quality of suspension, of held breath, of the operation pausing to gather itself before the next thing. You lie in your fighting position, and you are very still, and the afternoon passes through you. At some point, Dombrowski comes and takes a position 6 feet to your right, settling into his own section of the bank with the deliberate movements of a man who has been doing this all day and has found a method. He does not say anything for a long time. Then he says, "You hear about Winters." You ask, "What about Winters?" Dombrowski says, "Yesterday morning, before the assembly area, Winters led 11 men against 4 German 105 mm artillery pieces dug in near a manor house called Brecourt. The guns were positioned to fire on Utah Beach. Winters and 11 men took all 4 guns." He says this in the flat way that remarkable things are reported in the field, as information, without elevation, delivered in the same tone as ammunition counts and weather forecasts. 11 men, 4 artillery pieces. You are quiet for a moment. Then you say, how many did he lose? Dombrowski says, 1 dead, 2 wounded. You think about this. 11 men 1 day, 4 guns that would have fired on Utah Beach. This is the thing that does not appear on maps or in briefings. The small unit actions that reshape the larger operation. The 11 men who nobody dispatched officially, who were simply there with a problem and a leader and a route through the hedge. It will appear in the history books eventually, you suspect. Or it will not. Either way it happened. You go back to watching Quarantine. The afternoon deepens. At 4 o'clock the overcast breaks for the first time in 2 days. A narrow gap in the cloud to the southwest, and through it a section of blue sky. Actual blue, the kind of blue that does not exist in the English Channel in any season, but can appear over the Normandy fields in June when the weather decides to relent for a few minutes. You look at it. It lasts perhaps 12 minutes. Then the cloud closes again. But for 12 minutes there was blue sky over Normandy, which is not a military fact and is also not nothing. At 6 in the evening, Waverly comes along the hedgerow with a message from the company clerk. Wirtz wants to know if you have a spare rifle. You almost laugh. Almost. You do not have a spare rifle. Nobody has a spare rifle. But you pass the word along, because the word should be passed and Wirtz is fine, and he wants a rifle, which means he's thinking about tomorrow, which means he's in the right frame of mind for what tomorrow will require. Good. The evening cools. The sun, invisible behind the cloud, goes lower, and the light shifts from the flat gray of afternoon to the slightly warmer gray of evening, and the fields south of the junction go from green to a deeper green, and the rooftops of Carrington 3 miles away lose their detail in the softening light. 3 miles. You have covered 8 miles in 2 days, and there are 3 more to the first objective, and after that objective there will be others, and the operation will go on for weeks. You know this from the briefings. You know that the liberation of France is not a matter of days but of months, that the Bocage alone will take the better part of the summer to fight through, that the war in Europe will last as long as it lasts, which the briefing suggested was not long and which you are beginning to understand may be longer than the briefing suggested. But the war is not what you are thinking about exactly. What you are thinking about is this field, this hedgerow. The position 6 feet to your right where Dombrowski is watching the south approach. The position 6 feet to your left where a man from 2nd Platoon, Kowalski, you remember his name now, is watching the same approach. The total force on this section of hedgerow, 8 men. The total force on this junction, 1 company, approximately 120 men, which is 2/3 of E Company's authorized strength, on a day when that authorized strength has already been reduced by the last 2 days. 120 men, holding a road junction. 3 miles from Carentan. This is the scale you live in. Not the 150,000 who came ashore in the last 2 days. Not the 5,000 ships and the 800 aircraft and the 20 years of build-up and planning and the geopolitics of a world at war. Those things exist, and you know they exist, but they exist at a distance that makes them more like weather than like facts. The facts are 8 men on this section of hedgerow, 98 rounds of ammunition minus 6 from the morning contact, 1 entrenching tool, 1 canteen full with a purification tablet in it. These are the facts. You lie in your fighting position and you hold them. The night comes slowly. It comes the way the night comes in Normandy in June, not dramatically, not with sudden dark, but with a gradual reduction of everything, the colors draining out, the distances compressing, the sounds becoming more distinct as the visual world diminishes and the other senses compensate. You hear the wind in the hedgerow, a vehicle somewhere far to the north, American by the sound of it. Dombrowski shifting position, a bird briefly. The stream along the east side of the field, which you cannot see from your position but can hear now that the light is gone and sound travels further. The stream was here before the war. It will be here after. You think about rivers. You think about the Douve, which you held a bridge over, and the Ohio River, which is approximately 200 miles from Caldwell, and the way rivers keep moving, regardless of what is happening on their banks, the way water does not adjust its schedule for human events. The Douve was moving yesterday at 2 in the morning when you first crossed to the south bank, and it was moving when you left, and it is moving now, 3 miles north, carrying the spring runoff down toward the coast in the same direction the water has always moved. You lie in the hedgerow bank, and you think about rivers. This is the mind doing what it does in the late hours of the second night, when the operational thinking has settled and the body is asking for rest and the immediate tactical situation is stable enough that the attention can wander slightly to rivers and to letters and to the question of what Caldwell, Ohio looks like in June. It looks green. The hills east of Columbus are deeply green in June, and the town is small enough that the green is everywhere, at the ends of streets and behind buildings, and pushing against the edges of the roads. The hardware store where your mother keeps the books is on Main Street, and Main Street in Caldwell in June has a particular quality in the early morning when the light comes to the gaps between the buildings and hits the pavement at an angle that makes it look like somewhere else, somewhere larger, somewhere that might be important. You have not been there in 2 years. You will go back. This is not a wish. It is a plan. You have thought about it in the specific terms of a plan since basic training, the return, the particular sequence of arriving, the way the town will look when you know it again after all of this. Your mother at the door of the house on 4th Street. Your sister, who is 14 now, and who will have grown in ways you cannot predict. The dog, who is 7, and who your mother writes is fine and getting old and still sleeps on the porch. You'll sit on that porch. This is the plan. You hold the plan the way you hold everything important in the field. Not tightly, not loosely, but with the particular grip that keeps a thing available without wearing it out. The night deepens. Somewhere to the south, in Carentan, there are Germans who are also holding something. The town, the junction, the idea that the line can be held. They are doing this in a different language, with different equipment, in a different relationship to this country and this war. And whatever they are thinking tonight is not available to you, and you do not speculate. You know your side of the hedgerow. That is the extent of your authority. You watch the south approach. The road to Carentan is dark and still. At some point, you do not check your watch. You have stopped checking your watch. Waverly taps your shoulder, and you come back from wherever you were, which was the road, and also Caldwell, simultaneously, in the way that the tired mind inhabits two places at once. Waverly says, "Your relief is here, 2 hours." You move back from the bank. You lie down in the hay that someone, Webb probably, it has the quality of a thing Webb would do without being asked, has arranged in a pile behind the hedgerow, enough to be something, not enough to be comfortable, which is the right amount. You close your eyes. The sounds of the field settle around you. The wind, the stream, the distant movement of the war in other places, the close sound of men doing what you are doing, which is resting in place in the field with their rifles. The boots are still on. They are always on. You breathe in and out. The Normandy night holds you gently, indifferently, the way the night holds everything, the living and the dead, the advancing and the withdrawing, the men who know why they are here, and the men who are still working it out. You are one of the men who is still working it out. You have been here for 2 days. You jumped from an airplane at 1:30 in the morning over a country you had never visited, in the dark, into anti-aircraft fire, with 62 pounds on your back and a cricket in your pocket. You held a bridge with 14 men. You ate bread in a farmhouse kitchen. You drank cider from a cup in a doorway. You watched the 8-hour bombardment begin from a position on the south bank of the Duve and felt the concussion of 14-inch naval shells in your chest. You are 22 years old. From Noble County, Ohio, where the winters come early. The grass is wet. The night is quiet. The plan is a porch in Caldwell, in summer, the dog on the boards beside you, and your mother's voice from inside the house, and the particular green of the Ohio hills in the distance, and nothing needing to be done right now except sit. That is the plan. You hold it. You sleep. And in the fields around you, in the bocage and the farm tracks and the churchyards and the ditches and the roads from the coast, the operation continues, moving forward, consolidating the enormous and costly and improbable machinery of it turning over, inch by inch, field by field, through the ancient Norman countryside that was here before any of this began, and will be here long after the last gun is quiet. The dove moves. The hedgerows hold their ground. The birds will return at dawn. And in 3 miles, Carrington waits, its church tower and its rooftops and its streets, waiting for the next thing which is coming, which is always coming, which is the nature of a thing not yet finished. But tonight, right now, in this field, in this hay, in this particular moment of the enormous event, you sleep. The night holds you. The grass is wet. The stars are behind the cloud, where they always are, whether visible or not. The field is quiet. The war goes on without you for 2 hours. Just 2 hours. The war can wait. And the porch in Caldwell is waiting too, green and quiet in the Ohio summer, patient as rivers, patient as hedgerows, patient as everything that knows how to wait for the things that are worth waiting for. You sleep. The night is long and soft and full of the small sounds of a country at the beginning of being itself again. You sleep. You breathe. You are here. And for now, for these 2 hours, in the hay, in the dark, in the ancient fields of Normandy, that is enough. That is more than enough. That is everything. Thank you for spending this time with us. If this story kept you company tonight, a like and a subscribe would mean so much. It helps more people find their way here to this quiet place where history waits for you at the edge of sleep. If you have a moment, leave a comment below, even just to say you were here. We read every one. This has been Quiet History at Bedtime. Sleep well. Good night.